So, how did two brothers, like just working out of a humble bicycle shop, beat a heavily funded, highly educated dream team to invent the airplane?
Right, yeah.
And, you know, how did a quarter of a million people show up for a civil rights speech in 1963 without a single website, no email, literally no digital invitation to guide them?
Well, today we are taking a deep dive into the foundational introduction of a concept that has honestly reshaped modern business.
Totally.
We're talking about the idea of starting with why. We're going to explore this naturally occurring pattern of leadership, the thing that separates organizations that just, manipulate our behavior from the ones that actually inspire us.
Right.
And for anyone listening who's interested in entrepreneurship or leadership or even just understanding the underlying biology of human decision making.
Which is fascinating, by the way.
It really is. This is basically the ultimate shortcut to unlocking fierce loyalty and lasting influence.
Okay, so let's unpack this for everyone listening. We are looking at how you can apply this specific pattern to your own life and career, right?
Yeah.
So you avoid building something that, at the end of the day, just feels totally hollow.
Exactly.
Because we are constantly told that the recipe for success is obvious, right? Like, you need capital, you need to hire the absolute best talent in the market, and you need this massive public relations machine.
Right, the standard playbook.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the source material we are looking at today completely shatters that assumption. And to understand how, we have to go back to the early 1900s, to the global race for manned flight.
Yeah, the race to invent the airplane it serves as the perfect historical control group because it isolates all those variables we are traditionally taught to value, Like, if you surveyed the landscape of aviation in the early 20th century, there was one man who possessed absolutely every ingredient that supposedly guarantees success.
Samuel Pierpont Langley.
Right. His name was Samuel Pierpont Langley. And he was a highly regarded senior officer at the Smithsonian Institution.
Not a bad gig.
Not at all. He was a mathematics professor who had worked at Harvard, and his social and professional network included, like, some of the most powerful men in America. We're talking Andrew Carnegie and Alexander Graham Bell.
Okay, I want to pause on that for a second because I think it's hard to contextualize that level of influence today.
Oh, yeah.
Having Carnegie and Bell in your corner back then, I mean, it's basically the equivalent of having Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and the entire board of Apple acting as your personal advisory committee today.
That's a great way to put it.
Right. Like, he had the absolute elite establishment just totally propping him up.
He had their ear, but more importantly, he had their financial backing and their institutional credibility. Because of his pedigree, the War Department actually awarded Langley a $50,000 grant to fund his flying machine project.
Which is 50 grand back then is insane.
It was an astronomical amount of research capital for the early 1900s. I mean, he didn't have to bootstrap. He didn't have to worry about keeping the lights on.
Right.
With that funding, Langley assembled just a veritable dream team. He hired the finest minds, the most educated engineers, the best aerodynamicists of the day.
Actually.
And they used the most expensive, cutting-edge materials available. Plus, the public relations machine was just working in overdrive. The press followed him everywhere.
Wow.
The entire country was reading the newspapers, just waiting for the inevitable day Samuel Pierpont Langley would take to the skies.
Okay, but I have to push back a little here.
Sure.
Because on paper, it seems perfectly logical that he should win, right?
Right.
If I am trying to achieve a massive technological breakthrough today, I absolutely want the Harvard professors, I want the millions in funding, I want the best materials.
Right, who wouldn't?
Exactly. So how can having an abundance of resources and top-tier talent possibly be a disadvantage?
Well, it becomes a disadvantage when those resources obscure the fundamental mechanism of motivation. Let's look at the other side of the equation. Just a few hundred miles away, in Dayton, Ohio, you have Wilbur and Orville Wright.
The Wright brothers.
The Wright brothers. And their situation was the absolute mirror opposite of Langley's. They had zero external funding for their venture. None.
None at all.
Zero. No government grants, no high-level connections in Washington or the industrial sector. And get this, not a single person on their team had an advanced degree.
Wow.
Wilbur and Orville themselves never even finished high school, let alone college.
That's wild.
They were funding their experiments just with the meager profits from a humble bicycle shop. Yet, on December 17th, 1903, the Wright brothers took to the skies, and Langley failed.
The contrast is just staggering. It's like putting a rocket engine on a car before you've even figured out the steering.
Exactly.
The massive funding just accelerated Langley's team in the wrong direction, while the Wright brothers had to, meticulously figure out the steering, the foundational purpose, the why first.
That's a perfect analogy.
But what was the actual, mechanical difference in how these two teams operated day to day? Because clearly, Langley's team wanted to fly just as badly as the Wrights did.
Well, both teams definitely possessed an incredibly strong work ethic,
For sure.
and both had keen scientific minds. The structural difference, though, it lay in the biological source of their motivation.
Okay, break that down for me.
So, Samuel Pierpont Langley was motivated by what he could achieve. Specifically, he was driven by the prospect of fame and wealth. He wanted the prestige of being the first man to fly. That is a purely external, results-based motivation.
Right.
The Wright brothers, conversely, they were driven by a cause. They held this intense, infectious belief that if they could figure out this flying machine, it would fundamentally change the course of human history.
So they were doing it for the impact.
Yes.
Oh.
They believed in the nobility of the pursuit itself. They were motivated by their why.
But, are we sure about Langley's internal motivations? It's easy to look back historically and paint the loser as greedy and the winners as these noble heroes, right?
Yeah.
What's the actual tangible proof that Langley was only in it for the fame?
The proof is in how he reacted to adversity and ultimate defeat. And this is actually the most critical data point in the entire story.
Okay.
A few days after Orville and Wilbur successfully flew at Kitty Hawk, Langley quit.
He just quit.
He completely shut down his project. Think about that for a second. If his genuine goal was to advance the science of human flight, he could have looked at the Wright brothers' success and said, "This is incredible, the concept is proven.
Right, let's keep going.
Now I am going to take my massive War Department funding, my Harvard engineers, and my superior materials, and I am going to improve upon their rudimentary technology."
Yeah, he could have built the second vastly superior airplane.
But he didn't. Prior to the Wright's success, Langley had experienced some highly public failures. His test plane, the Aerodrome, had crashed unceremoniously right into the Potomac River.
Oh, no.
And the press had ridiculed him mercilessly for it. Because his primary drive was personal prestige and wealth, the exact moment the Wright brothers crossed the finish line first, all those external rewards just vanished.
Right. So he just packed it in.
He realized he couldn't be famous as the inventor of the airplane, so he completely lost interest in aviation. He wasn't committed to the cause of flight. He was committed to Samuel Pierpont Langley.
Man, that drastically reframes the whole bicycle shop thing. The Wright brothers team, they endured terrible conditions. They were out in the freezing cold of the Outer Banks, suffering through multiple crashes, endless failures, constant public skepticism.
Yeah.
And they weren't enduring that because they were being paid top dollar by the government. They endured it because they had internalized the Wright brothers' belief.
Yeah.
They were inspired, not just employed.
That's it, exactly. That shared belief acts as a structural adhesive for a team. If you rely purely on resources and external rewards to build your team, you are forcing a result rather than designing an environment where the result happens naturally.
That makes a lot of sense.
There is this profound metaphor in our source material regarding the American automobile industry.
Oh, the car doors, right?
Yes. So in the late 20th century, American car executives visited a Japanese automotive assembly line to study their manufacturing process.
Okay.
In the United States, at the end of the assembly line, there was a specific worker whose entire job was to take a rubber mallet and tap the edges of the car doors to ensure they fit perfectly into the frame.
Right, just forcing it in.
Exactly. But when the Americans toured the Japanese plant, they noticed this job didn't exist. So they asked their guides, "Hey, when do you make sure the door fits?" And the Japanese engineers responded, "We make sure it fits when we design it."
That analogy cuts straight to the core of this.
It really does.
Langley was using his money, his connections, his prestige as a giant rubber mallet. He was trying to force the airplane into existence through sheer brute force and capital. But the Wright brothers engineered their team for success from the very beginning by designing it around a shared belief.
The fit was built into the foundation.
Right. And I think the practical takeaway for anyone listening is to really audit your own projects. Are you obsessing over the capital or the credentials you lack? Because you have to define a purpose so compelling that people will suffer the setbacks with you, regardless of the immediate financial payoff.
Because a vision built on a why survives hardships that crush a vision built only on a what.
Exactly. Okay, but I buy that a shared belief works when you have two brothers in a garage risking their lives for a passion project.
Sure.
But let's scale this up. Once you have shareholders, a board of directors, thousands of employees, doesn't belief just get crushed by the bottom line? Like, how could this start with why concept possibly survive in a massive, cutthroat corporate environment?
Well, it doesn't just survive, it actually becomes the ultimate filter for massive industry disruption.
Really?
Yeah. The transition from a small passion project to a multi-billion-dollar corporation is best illustrated by looking at the birth of Apple in the 1970s.
Okay, classic example.
When you examine the early days of the personal computer revolution, computers were strictly viewed as these massive, complicated tools for big business and government. They were totally inaccessible to the average person, both financially and technically.
Right, they took up whole rooms.
Exactly. Now, Steve Wozniak, very much like the Wright brothers, was not motivated by the prospect of building a billion-dollar company. He envisioned a highly specific, noble purpose for the technology.
He wanted to put the power of a corporation into the hands of a single person.
Yes, he saw the personal computer as a great equalizer. He believed that if you could put a computer in the hands of the little man, it would level the playing field against massive bureaucratic corporations.
Okay.
He designed the Apple I and later the revolutionary Apple II to be affordable and simple to use specifically to advance this ideological belief. But you know, an ideological belief, no matter how pure, remains a hobby unless it can be scaled.
And that is where Steve Jobs enters the equation.
Exactly. Jobs realized that building a robust, scalable company was the most powerful megaphone he could build to broadcast Wozniak's revolution to the world.
But I have to play devil's advocate for a moment here.
Go for it.
Steve Jobs was famously ruthless, right?
Yeah.
Like, the mythology around him is filled with stories of him berating employees, obsessing over profit margins, completely dominating competitors. Are we really supposed to believe that Apple wasn't motivated by dominating the market and making billions?
I get that, but we have to separate personality from organizational purpose.
Okay.
Jobs' intensity and, yes, at times, his ruthlessness were actually symptoms of his uncompromising commitment to that underlying belief, challenging the status quo.
Oh, interesting.
He didn't demand perfection because he wanted to sell more beige boxes. He demanded perfection because he viewed any compromise as a betrayal of their mission to empower the individual with flawless design.
So it all tied back to the why.
Exactly. And the market responded to that ideological clarity. I mean, they achieved $1 million in revenue in year one, $10 million in year two, and $100 million in year four. In just 6 years, they reached $1 billion in valuation.
Okay, but rapid growth in the tech sector isn't entirely unique. Lots of companies scale quickly.
True. But what makes Apple the definitive case study isn't their ability to build a fast-growing computer company. It is their unprecedented ability to repeat this pattern of disruption across multiple, totally unrelated industries.
Right, they didn't just stay in computers.
They started in desktop computers. Then they disrupted the music industry with the iPod and iTunes. Then they completely redefined the mobile phone industry with the iPhone, and eventually moved into tablets, wearables, film production.
This is where the mechanics of brand permission come in. Because if Apple defined themselves by what they do, if their core identity was just, we make computers, then consumers would never have accepted a mobile phone from them.
Exactly. Look at the historical graveyard of their competitors who tried to do the exact same thing.
Like who?
Well, Dell and Gateway. They had the exact same access to top-tier talent, brilliant engineers, and expensive consultants as Apple. They had massive manufacturing capabilities, but Dell defined itself exclusively by what it did, making computers.
Right.
In 2002, Dell attempted to expand by releasing a PDA, and in 2003, they released an MP3 player. Both were spectacular failures.
I don't even remember the Dell MP3 player.
Exactly. Gateway tried to sell flat-screen televisions in 2003. They had been manufacturing high-quality flat-screen computer monitors for years, so the technical leap was minimal, but it failed miserably.
It's because it creates a sense of, like, biological dissonance.
Yes.
Like, if I go to a store and see a Gateway television, my brain just rejects it. I think, you are a computer company. Why are you trying to sell me a TV?
Okay.
It feels inauthentic, even if the specs on the TV are fantastic.
That dissonance you are describing is a deeply biological reaction, and this brings us to the core framework of our source material, the golden circle.
The golden circle.
Imagine 3 concentric circles, like a bullseye. The outermost circle is the what. Every organization on the planet knows what they do, the tangible products they sell, or the services they offer.
Simple enough.
The middle circle is the how. Many companies know how they do things, their unique selling proposition, their proprietary algorithms, or their specific manufacturing process.
Okay.
But the innermost circle, the bullseye, is the why. Very few people or organizations can clearly articulate why they do what they do.
And to preempt the obvious counterargument here, making money is not a why.
No, absolutely not. Making money is a result. It is a metric of success. The why is your purpose, your cause, or your belief. Why does your company exist beyond revenue? Why do you get out of bed in the morning, and why should anyone else care?
It's the core driver.
Yes. Most companies communicate from the outside in. They start with the most tangible, easy-to-understand thing, the what, and move inward toward the how. A typical, uninspired marketing pitch sounds like this. We make great computers. They are beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one?
I mean, it's just a sterile list of facts and features.
Right.
There is zero emotional resonance there. It's a textbook definition of a commodity pitch.
Exactly. But because Apple operates from the inside out, they start with the why. Their communication sounds fundamentally different. It sounds like this. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one?
It's wild because the data points are identical.
Identical.
The design is still beautiful, it's still simple to use, and it's still a computer. But the order in which the information is presented completely alters how I receive it. It hits a completely different part of the brain.
And that isn't just a metaphor, it is literal neuroscience. Oh yeah, the sources delve deeply into the evolutionary biology of this phenomenon. The golden circle corresponds precisely with a cross-section of the human brain.
Okay, lay this out for me.
The newest evolutionary area of our brain, the neocortex, corresponds with the what level of the circle. The neocortex is responsible for all of our rational, analytical thought. It processes data, facts, figures, and most importantly, language.
So when a company pitches me on gigabytes, processing speed, and price points, they are speaking exclusively to my neocortex.
Correct. Your neocortex easily comprehends that data, but the middle two sections of the brain make up the limbic system, which corresponds directly to the why and the how.
The limbic system.
Right. The limbic system is the ancient primal part of the brain. It is responsible for all of our feelings, things like trust, loyalty, and safety. It is also the center that controls all human behavior and all decision-making.
Wow.
But here is the critical mechanical detail. The limbic system has absolutely zero capacity for language.
Wait, hold on. This is a massive point. You were saying the part of my brain that actually pulls the trigger and makes a purchasing decision or decides to trust a leader literally does not have the biological wiring to process words.
That is exactly what I'm saying.
How does that even work in practice?
Well, think about a time you had to make a complex decision, and despite all the spreadsheets and data pointing to option A, you went with option B.
Oh, totally.
If someone asked you to explain your choice, you likely struggled. You probably said something like, I know what the data says, but it just doesn't feel right. Or, my gut is telling me to go with option B.
My gut doesn't have vocal cords.
Exactly. That feeling is your limbic system driving a decision based on trust or alignment of values, completely bypassing the language processing neocortex. Because the limbic system controls behavior but not language, we make the decision first based on why, and then we use the neocortex to rationalize that gut decision with the tangible facts. The what.
That perfectly explains the Apple phenomenon. When they say we believe in challenging the status quo, they are bypassing the analytical neocortex and speaking directly to the limbic system. They are triggering the biological mechanism for trust.
Yeah.
The physical iPhone is just the tangible proof my neocortex uses to justify the limbic system's desire to align with that belief.
Spot on. If you do not communicate your why, you are forcing people to make decisions using only their neocortex. You are forcing them to weigh features, benefits, and price.
Which is exhausting.
It takes effort, it causes decision fatigue, and it completely eliminates loyalty. When someone buys a gateway TV, their limbic system is screaming that something is out of alignment, even if the neocortex likes the price.
Okay, let's bring this down to earth for a minute, because not everyone listening to this is running a trillion-dollar tech monopoly.
True.
Imagine a listener who runs a small, everyday business, say a local independent coffee shop. How does the biology of the limbic system and the why apply to selling a $3 cup of coffee?
It actually dictates the entire strategic future of that shop.
How so?
If the owner defines the business by what they do, we roast and serve high-quality coffee beans, then they are forever imprisoned in the commodity coffee business. They will have to wake up every single day and fight a bloody war over price, location, and the nuance of their roast profile.
Right.
The moment a larger chain opens across the street with cheaper coffee and a drive-through, the neocortex of their customers will analyze the data, realize the competitor is cheaper and faster, and leave.
Because there is no limbic loyalty keeping them there.
Exactly. But what if the owner digs deep and realizes their actual why is, say, to build deep, meaningful community connections in a disconnected world?
Oh, I see where you're going.
The coffee is just the what. It is merely the current, tangible proof of that belief. Now, they can host local art showcases, they can start a neighborhood mentorship program, they could pivot to selling locally crafted ceramics in the shop.
And the customers won't experience that biological dissonance because they aren't buying coffee. They are buying into the cause of community connection.
Precisely. The coffee shop owner has bought themselves incredible strategic flexibility.
The source material offers a fantastic, highly practical tool to test if an organization is actually staying true to this why, right? It's called the celery test.
Ah, yes, the celery test. It is an indispensable filter for decision-making.
Walk us through it.
Let's walk through a scenario. Imagine you go to a high-end networking dinner party. You are surrounded by incredibly successful, wealthy entrepreneurs. During the course of the evening, one of them approaches you and says, you need to implement M&Ms in your organization. If you aren't using M&Ms, you are leaving massive revenue on the table.
Okay, M&Ms, got it.
Later, another highly respected CDO says, no, it's all about rice milk. The market data is overwhelmingly pointing toward rice milk. A third person tells you that Oreo cookies are the secret to their billion-dollar valuation. And finally, a fourth person insists, celery. You have to pivot your entire strategy to celery.
Which, by the way, this is exactly what it feels like to read modern business press or scroll through LinkedIn.
Oh, absolutely.
It is just a constant barrage of contradictory best practices from people who are objectively successful. It's totally overwhelming.
And it is overwhelming if you only operate on the what level. If you don't have a clear why, you go to the metaphorical supermarket the next day and you buy the M&Ms, the rice milk, the Oreos, and the celery.
You buy it all.
You spend an enormous amount of time, capital, and energy chasing all these disparate tactics. And when you are standing in line at the checkout counter, your cart is a mess.
Right.
If an employee or a customer looks in your cart, they have absolutely no idea what you stand for. Your actions are sending a confused, contradictory message.
But let's apply the filter. What if I do know my why?
Let's say you have done the deep work, and you know your why is to always do things that are healthy and beneficial for the human body.
Okay.
Now you go back to that same dinner party. You receive the exact same advice from the exact same successful people. But this time, when you go to the supermarket, you possess a limbic filter. You walk right past the M&Ms. You ignore the Oreos. You only purchase the celery and the rice milk.
That is so clear.
You save time, you save money, and most importantly, when you stand in line holding only celery and rice milk, your values are visible. Everyone who looks at you can instantly see exactly what you believe. You have successfully communicated your why through your whats.
I want to apply the celery test to a modern tech scenario.
Yeah.
Because this is where companies constantly lose their way.
Oh, definitely. Let's do it.
Imagine a listener is running a B2B software startup, right? Their why is simplifying the lives of overwhelmed, non-technical small business owners. But right now, every investor, every tech blog, every board member is screaming, you have to integrate generative AI, you need blockchain, you need complex predictive analytics.
The current hype cycle, yeah.
Exactly. If they don't have a why, they spend millions building an AI feature that their mom-and-pop clients don't understand and are honestly terrified of.
Right.
But if they apply the celery test, they realize that adding a highly complex AI dashboard to a system meant for non-technical users completely fails the test. It might be the hottest trend in the market, but it violates their why.
That is a perfect modern application. And the beautiful thing is, the celery test scales.
What do you mean?
Well, if the why is clearly articulated and understood across the entire organization, you don't need a bottleneck of micromanagement. Anyone from the CEO down to the newest junior developer can make a strategic decision as accurately as the founder.
Just by asking the question.
Yes, simply by asking, does this feature pass the celery test for our core belief?
Okay, so we've established that the Wright brothers proved this concept works for innovation in a bicycle shop. Apple proved its scales to create massive corporate disruption and limbic loyalty among consumers. But let's raise the stakes to the absolute highest level. Because if Apple shows us how a why creates loyal customers, the civil rights movement shows us how a why creates a societal shift that alters the fabric of a nation.
Moving from corporate strategy to societal transformation truly reveals the power of this biological
It
mechanism.
really does.
Let's examine the events leading up to August 28th, 1963, the March on Washington. 250,000 people descended on the nation's capital to hear Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. deliver his famous "I Have a Dream" speech on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial.
I want to focus intensely on the logistics of that day because it honestly boggles the modern mind.
Oh, yeah.
In 1963, there were no cell phones, there was no internet, no social media algorithms to boost a post, no mass email marketing software.
None of it. The organizers did not mail out 250,000 paper invitations. There was no centralized website where people could check the date, the time, or the exact location.
Right.
Yet 250,000 human beings from across a highly fractured and geographically massive country arrived on the correct day at the precise time. How does that happen?
I mean, word of mouth alone seems completely insufficient for a crowd that size. How did the message penetrate that deeply into the culture?
It wasn't about the event itself, it was about the resonance of the belief. Dr. King had a profound gift. He was certainly not the only person who suffered the injustices of pre-civil rights America.
Of course not.
There were many other intelligent, charismatic leaders and gifted orators speaking out at the time, but Dr. King understood the mechanics of inspiration. He didn't just travel the country giving people a list of what's that needed to change. He didn't read them comprehensive legislative proposals.
He didn't lead with the neocortex.
Exactly. He articulated a core belief.
He spoke directly to the limbic system of the nation.
He talked constantly about his belief that there are two fundamental types of laws in the universe: just laws and unjust laws. He argued that any law that uplifts human personality is inherently just, and any law that degrades human personality is unjust.
Wow.
This framing elevated the cause. His belief was larger than just the immediate civil rights struggle. It was a profound philosophical stance on the nature of mankind and how human beings are obligated to treat one another.
That is so powerful.
Because he communicated from the inside out, that belief bypassed the analytical disagreements people might have had about specific policies. It touched them deep inside their limbic brains.
And our sources draw a really brilliant kind of counterintuitive conclusion about that crowd. And they ask this provocative question: how many of those 250,000 people actually showed up for Dr. King?
And the answer is zero.
Zero.
Nobody showed up for Dr. King. They showed up for themselves.
Right.
They showed up because of what they believed. It was their own internal belief about what America should be that drove them to board buses, drive across the country, endure the stifling August heat, and face the very real threat of violence and hostility.
Dr. King simply provided the vocabulary for the limbic feeling they already possessed.
Exactly. That completely redefines what we think of as leadership.
It totally does. We often picture great leaders as these forceful figures, pulling a reluctant crowd forward through sheer charisma and willpower.
Right, dragging people along.
But in reality, they aren't pulling anyone by force. They're just holding up a mirror. They're giving people a platform and the words to express what is already burning inside them.
And the most compelling demographic evidence that this was a shared universal belief rather than a narrow political agenda is that nearly a quarter of the attendees that day were white.
Wow, a quarter.
This wasn't exclusively a belief about Black America. It was a belief about a shared, idealized America. It was a cause that resonated with anyone whose limbic system aligned with Dr. King's, regardless of their racial background.
The text highlights a very specific phrasing Dr. King used that encapsulates this perfectly. He delivered the "I have a dream" speech. He did not deliver the "I have a plan" speech.
That distinction is everything. A dream is a why. A dream speaks to purpose, cause, and belief.
And a plan.
A plan is a how. A plan is a structural roadmap. A plan engages the neocortex, but a dream engages the limbic system.
Right.
However, the sources are very careful to note that a visionary why type of leader like Dr. King cannot change the world alone. A dream without a plan is just a hallucination.
True.
Dr. King needed how types around him to build the infrastructure that made the dream tangible.
He needed the megaphone.
Exactly. The text uses the metaphor of the megaphone, which is essentially a three-dimensional model of the golden circle.
Okay, paint that picture for us.
At the very top, the pinpoint of the cone, you have the leader, the why. They provide the vision. But just below them, in the expanding part of the cone, is the how level.
Who sits there?
These are the senior executives, the organizers, the operational geniuses who know how to build systems. In Dr. King's case, this was embodied by people like Ralph Abernathy, his longtime friend and the financial secretary of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference.
The operational master.
Yes. Abernathy was the one who would take the podium after Dr. King had whipped the crowd into an inspired frenzy and say, "Now let me tell you what that means we are going to do tomorrow morning."
Ah, so the why provides the energy, but the how provides the steering wheel.
Perfect way to put it.
And then below the how is the what level, the wide opening of the megaphone where the rubber meets the road, the thousands of volunteers, the boycotts, the specific actions. If that infrastructure isn't there, the vision just dissipates into the air.
A visionary leader absolutely requires the megaphone of an organized, aligned system to amplify their vision loud enough and clear enough for the chaotic marketplace or the nation to hear it.
Okay, so we've established the monumental power of inspiration. The Wrights, Apple, Dr. King, they all tapped into the limbic system. But if we look around the modern business landscape, inspiration is incredibly rare. Most companies operate more like Samuel Pierpont Langley. If inspiration is so much more effective, why do the vast majority of organizations rely on manipulation to drive behavior? Let's break down the actual structural difference between the two approaches.
The structural difference is that motivation or manipulation relies entirely on external factors, whereas inspiration relies on internal fulfillment.
Okay.
The sources categorize motivation into carrots and sticks. And it is important to clarify that in this context, the word manipulation is not necessarily pejorative or evil.
Right, it's just a tactic.
It is simply a description of a benign, highly common tactical approach to driving behavior. The reason manipulations are the dominant strategy in business is very simple. They work.
They work.
In the short term, they work incredibly well.
I mean, it's the adult version of offering a kid candy to clean their room, right? I will give you this external reward if you perform this specific behavior. If I drop the price of my software by 50%, my neocortex tells me I will get a spike in new users. It's mathematically verifiable.
Dropping the price is the most common manipulation, and it will absolutely drive a spike in business. But the sources compare price dropping to heroin.
Heroin.
Yeah. The initial hit is fantastic. The numbers go up. Everyone celebrates. But the more you rely on it, the harder it is to kick the habit. Your profit margins become razor thin. To compensate for the lower margins, you have to sell a vastly larger volume of product.
Which conditions your customers to only buy when there is a sale, destroying any brand loyalty.
Exactly. Eventually, the product is stripped of all perceived value and becomes a pure commodity.
You train the market to evaluate you purely on your what. And there is always someone willing to sell their what a penny cheaper than you. It's a race to the bottom. What about promotions? Like the whole concept of value add.
The American automotive industry is a prime example of this manipulation. General Motors successfully motivated people to buy cars and led the industry for 77 years.
77 years.
But they didn't do it by inspiring loyalty. They did it largely through heavy promotions, specifically massive cashback incentives.
Which means they were leaders in market share, but they were not actually leading the market.
Precisely. They were buying market share at the expense of their own profit margins. The sources also discuss the rebate industry in retail, which is a particularly cynical form of promotion.
Oh, mail-in rebates.
Yes. Companies offer a mail-in rebate to lower the perceived price, but the process is intentionally designed to be tedious and complicated. This relies on a concept called breakage.
Breakage.
Breakage is the percentage of customers who buy the product intending to get the rebate but fail to claim it because they lose the receipt or miss the deadline. Retailers actually factor breakage into their profit models. They are literally taxing the disorganized to maintain their margins.
When you look at the mechanics of it, it feels fundamentally manipulative. It doesn't build trust. It extracts value.
Exactly.
Then you have fear, which seems like the ultimate stick.
Fear is arguably the most powerful manipulation because it triggers deep survival instincts. There is an old corporate adage, no one ever got fired for hiring IBM.
Right.
That is a behavior born entirely of fear. An IT manager might look at a better, cheaper software solution from a small startup, but their neocortex calculates the risk. If the startup fails, the manager gets fired. If IBM fails, the manager can say, well, it's IBM, who could have known?
They choose the inferior product to protect their own job.
Yes, you see fear constantly in political advertising warnings that an opponent will destroy the economy, or in public service announcements, like the classic, this is your brain on drugs, egg in a frying pan. Fear violently agitates our insecurities.
And the flip side of the fear coin is aspiration, right? Instead of terrifying you with what might happen, they tempt you with what you desire. 6 easy steps to losing weight, or how to become a millionaire in real estate.
Aspirational messages tempt us, but they are most effective on those who lack discipline. You can easily manipulate someone into buying an expensive gym membership in the first week of January using an aspirational message about the perfect body.
We've all been there.
But aspiration is merely a short-term response to a long-term desire. To get that person to actually go to the gym 3 days a week for the entire year requires deep internal inspiration, not just a picture of a fitness model.
Then we have peer pressure, which taps into our desire to fit in. Like 4 out of 5 dentists prefer Trident.
Oh.
Or celebrity endorsement.
Oh, the celebrity endorsement.
The source material mentions Tiger Woods endorsing a watch that can withstand a 5,000-gram shock. If a golfer ever swung a club with 5,000 Gs of force, their arms would physically rip off their body.
It's absurd.
The technical spec is completely irrelevant to the consumer, but we buy the watch because we want to be associated with the prestige of Tiger Woods.
Right. The final manipulation, the text details, is novelty, which companies almost always mislabel as innovation.
Oh, tell me about that.
The story of the Motorola RAZR is the perfect cautionary tale. In 2004, Motorola released the RAZR. It was a flip phone made of aircraft-grade aluminum, and it was breathtakingly thin.
Oh, everyone had one. It was a massive hit.
Millions of people bought it. The CEO of Motorola touted it to the press as a revolutionary innovation.
But looking back, it wasn't a true innovation at all. It didn't change the paradigm of how we communicate.
It was merely a novelty, a shiny new feature on an existing what? Less than 4 years after that massive success, Motorola's stock had lost half its value.
Wow, half.
Competitors quickly reverse-engineered the manufacturing process and matched the thinness. Because Motorola had no underlying why keeping customers loyal, the moment competitors matched the feature, the market moved on.
So they were forced back into aggressive price drops to move inventory.
Yeah, right back to fighting for scraps in a commodity market. They confused a temporary novelty with sustainable innovation. True innovation, like the iPhone, fundamentally changes the trajectory of an industry. Novelty just boosts your quarterly earnings report.
So all of these tactics, price drops, promotions, fear, aspiration, peer pressure, novelty, they're just varying flavors of carrots and sticks.
Exactly.
They absolutely work to drive a transaction, but they completely fail to breed loyalty.
And over time, they become incredibly expensive to maintain. The gains are strictly short-term. It creates a stressful, buckling system for both the buyer, who is constantly bombarded with manipulations, and the seller, who is constantly sacrificing margins to maintain volume.
While inspiration, on the other hand, operates on a completely different psychological plane. Inspired people act because they fundamentally want to.
Yes, the loyalty is so deep that they will willingly suffer inconvenience or financial cost for the cause.
They are the people sleeping in a tent on the sidewalk for 3 days, just to be the first to buy an iPhone, even though they could walk into the store 2 weeks later and buy it with 0 line.
Exactly.
They are the people who rode buses for days in the August heat to hear Dr. King. No amount of price dropping or promotion can manufacture that level of irrational devotion.
Because when people are inspired, their motivation is deeply personal. They aren't reacting to your incentives. They are expressing their own identity.
And this brings up a statistic from the text that I found absolutely staggering. The sources note that over 80% of Americans do not feel they have their dream job.
80%.
80%. That means the vast majority of the corporate ecosystem is functioning purely on carrots and sticks. They are using salaries, bonuses, and the fear of unemployment to force people to show up to work. I try to imagine the sheer scale of the economic and creative boom that would occur if companies could transition from manipulating that 80% to actually inspiring them.
The ripple effects will be revolutionary, not just economically, but culturally. Neuroscience shows that people who feel inspired and safe at work are vastly more productive and creative.
Makes sense.
They take more innovative risks because they aren't driven by fear. Furthermore, they go home happier, which means they treat their families and communities better. But maintaining that inspiration as an organization grows is incredibly difficult.
Why is that?
The text identifies a phenomenon known as the split.
The split. Walk me through the mechanics of how a company loses its soul.
The split is the nearly inevitable consequence of rapid success.
Well,
When an organization is first founded, it usually starts in a basement or a garage.
right.
The founder's passion, the why, is palpable. The team is small. Everyone interacts with the founder daily, and decisions are made rapidly based on gut instinct and limbic alignment.
But then they succeed.
Right. As the company becomes successful, the volume of the megaphone increases. They hire hundreds of employees. They go public. Suddenly, the metrics of what they do, revenue targets, market share, quarterly earnings, become the overwhelming focus of the board of directors.
So the neocortex just takes over the company.
Exactly. The executives become so obsessed with managing the what and optimizing the how that the why becomes fuzzy. The founders distance themselves from the day-to-day operations.
And the employees.
The employees no longer know the original cause. They just know their KPIs. That divergence where the what grows exponentially while the why fades into the background is the split.
Wow.
When a company hits the split, they lose their organic inspiration and they are forced to fall back on manipulations to keep the machine running.
The source text highlights Walmart as a massive, cautionary example of the split, doesn't it?
Walmart's history perfectly maps this trajectory. Sam Walton did not build Walmart just to sell cheap goods. He built it with a very clear, profound why. He believed in serving the community and looking after the average working-class person.
Right.
He believed that if he looked after his employees and his community, they would look after the business. He famously visited stores constantly, talking directly to the greeters and the cashiers, reinforcing that belief.
But after he passed away, the leadership changed.
When Walton died, the executives who inherited the company possessed incredible operational skills, but they lacked his limbic vision. They focused exclusively on the massive scale, the ruthless supply chain efficiency, the bottom line.
So the why of community service went entirely fuzzy.
Walmart suffered a massive split. They became infamous for aggressive labor practices and destroying local economies rather than serving them. They continued to dominate market share through the pure manipulation of impossibly low prices, but they completely lost the limbic loyalty and the inspiration that Walton had so carefully cultivated.
Contrast that history with Costco, which the text also points out. Costco maintained an iron grip on its clarity of purpose. They maintained their why regarding how they treat their employees, paying them well above minimum wage, offering excellent benefits, and how they treat their customers.
Yes.
And over the long term, Costco's stock vastly outperformed Walmart's in the years following Sam Walton's death.
Which empirically proves that obsessing over the why is actually the most effective strategy for maximizing the what in the long run. Inspiration isn't just a feel-good HR concept. It is a highly defensible economic moat.
So if I am a leader, or even just managing a small team, how do I apply this today? I need to audit how I am getting people to take action. Am I relying on dropping the price for clients? Am I relying on threatening my employees with bad performance reviews? Am I manipulating my kids with treats?
Right, asking those hard questions.
Because if the answer is yes, I am only renting their behavior. The moment I run out of treats or someone else offers a bigger discount, they're gone. True loyalty demands that I shift from transactional manipulation to inspirational purpose.
To synthesize all of these complex historical and biological threads into a single, cohesive framework. Whether you are attempting to invent a rudimentary flying machine in an Ohio bicycle shop, revolutionize the global computing industry from a California garage, or permanently alter the civil rights landscape of a nation from the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, the overarching law of human behavior remains the same.
And what is that law?
The what you do, the airplane, the iPhone, the march, is ultimately just the tangible physical proof of why you do it. Great leaders do not merely offer people a course of action, they offer them a cause of action.
We have thoroughly established that starting with why is the fundamental key to bypassing the analytical brain, tapping into the limbic system, and unlocking lasting loyalty. It's about designing the fit from the very beginning, not hammering a door into place with a rubber mallet of resources.
Exactly.
But this entire concept requires us to question our deepest assumptions about how the world works. What happens when we operate in an environment that firmly assumes it already possesses all the right answers?
That's the real danger.
Much like the people who are completely certain our source author was describing John F. Kennedy at the beginning of the book's chapter, when in reality the exact same data points perfectly described the inauguration of Adolf Hitler. We will leave you to mull over this final provocative question. How many of your most important high-stakes daily decisions are currently being driven by perceived truths that might actually be entirely false? That is exactly the illusion we will shatter in our next deep dive. Until then, keep asking why.
So I want you to imagine a 43-year-old man, and he's sworn in on a really cold January day as his country's chief executive.
Okay, setting the scene.
Right. And he is standing alongside this famous general, someone who actually commanded the armed forces in a war defeating Germany.
Uh-huh.
Plus, this man was raised Catholic. And after the swearing in, he spends hours watching parades and stays up celebrating until 3 in the morning. So who is this?
I mean, it sounds so incredibly specific,
Yeah.
it has to be John F. Kennedy.
Right. I mean, you hear those details, you picture the black and white footage, the breath visible in the chilly air, right? This whole new era dawning in America, and you immediately jump to JFK.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the date was actually January 30th, 1933. I just described Adolf Hitler.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's quite a twist.
Yeah, and that feeling of shock right now, that sudden, almost physical jolt where you realize you had it completely wrong.
It's visceral, yeah.
Exactly. That is what happens when a single missing detail just completely collapses into absolute truth. Because we build these massive mental models of how the world works, right? And we operate inside them with complete certainty.
Yeah, completely unaware that our whole foundation might be, well, entirely backwards.
And that unseen, flawed foundation is exactly what we are dissecting today. So, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are looking at the chapter called Assume. And we're going to explore why the decisions we make in business, in entrepreneurship, and honestly, even just in our personal lives, so often fail, even when we have mountains of data telling us we are right.
Which is such a frustrating experience.
Oh, totally. And more importantly, we are going to break down how the most effective leaders stop trying to hammer their desired outcomes into place at the last minute, and instead, they sort of engineer their success from the very beginning.
Right, because the reality is every single instruction you give to a team or every strategy you map out for a product launch or even, every course of action you set in your own life, it all starts with a decision.
A foundational choice.
Exactly. And every single one of those decisions is rooted in an assumption. And if you don't understand the anatomy of that assumption, you are essentially flying blind.
Okay, let's unpack this. Think about the historical assumption that the Earth was flat. Today, we treat that as just a quirky piece of historical trivia, right? Like a joke about ancient ignorance.
Yeah, we think they were just being silly.
Right. But if you actually transport yourself back to that era, this wasn't just like a casual belief. It was an absolute, undisputed law of physics in the minds of the people living it.
Right. It was reality.
Yeah. And because they assumed it to be true, it completely dictated their physical behavior on a global scale.
It was an invisible cage, basically. I mean, people didn't explore. They didn't push the boundaries of navigation. And why would you?
Right. Why take the risk?
Exactly. If your foundational assumption is that venturing too far means literally falling off the edge of reality into some dark abyss, well, staying put isn't just a preference. It is a vital survival strategy.
Right.
Their entire physical reality was confined by conceptual error.
Which means, and this is wild to think about, the lack of global exploration during that time had absolutely nothing to do with a lack of resources.
No, not at all.
It wasn't because they couldn't build ships sturdy enough or because they lacked ambition or because there wasn't, a financial incentive to find new trade routes. The bottleneck was entirely psychological.
And that is the crucial mechanism we really have to understand here. The moment that minor detail was corrected, the revelation that the Earth is, in fact, round the behavior of the human race changed on a massive, unprecedented scale.
Almost overnight, historically speaking.
Right? Suddenly, societies began to traverse the planet. Global trade routes were established. Spices, textiles, and wealth just began to flow.
Which changed everything.
Yeah, new ideas like advanced mathematics and astronomy were suddenly being shared across continents, unleashing this huge wave of innovation that fundamentally altered the trajectory of humanity. And all of that latent potential was just locked behind one simple false assumption.
So the correction of the assumption is what actually moved the human race forward, not some sudden leap in shipbuilding technology.
Exactly. The tech was there, the mindset wasn't.
But I have to play devil's advocate here for a second, because if you're listening to this, you might be thinking, well, we are not medieval sailors navigating by the stars anymore.
Fair point.
Right. If I am running a modern business, I don't just guess. I live in the information age. We have terabytes of consumer data. We A/B test our marketing copy down to the literal
Oh,
pixel.
yeah. We track everything.
We employ data scientists. We run exhaustive focus groups. We track user retention rates to the microsecond. So shouldn't that absolute avalanche of empirical data protect us from operating on a flat Earth assumption?
You would think so, wouldn't you? That is the conventional wisdom.
Yeah.
But the data actually creates a massive illusion of safety. Having mountains of data does not protect you from a flawed assumption. In fact, it often weaponizes it.
Wait, really? How does more information actually make it worse?
Well, let's look at the sequence of events. Data collection doesn't just happen in a vacuum. Right? You don't just walk outside and gather old data everywhere.
You have to aim your focus somewhere.
Exactly. You gather data to answer a specific question.
Okay.
But where does the question come from? It comes from your foundational assumption.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Right. So if your flawed assumption sets the parameters for what you are measuring, all that pristine, highly accurate data will do is help you execute the wrong plan flawlessly.
Wow. Okay, so it's essentially a calibration issue. Like, if I set up a multi-million-dollar telescope to study the moon, right, and the lens is ground perfectly and the sensors are completely state-of-the-art.
Best money can buy.
Exactly. But the entire apparatus is calibrated just a fraction of a degree to the left.
Yep.
I'm going to get incredibly high resolution, perfectly clear, flawlessly rendered data of empty space. The telescope works perfectly, but the calibration guarantees a total miss.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize it. The telescope is your analytics department. The calibration is your assumption. Let's brown this in, like a real business scenario.
Let's do it.
Imagine a legacy retail brand, right? And they're steadily losing market share. The executive team assumes, so there's the calibration, they assume that their customers are leaving because the products are just too expensive.
Which is a very common assumption.
Very common. They assume price is the singular driving factor in their industry.
So what do? They point the telescope at price.
Yeah, good.
They start gathering data on how to lower manufacturing costs. They analyze competitor pricing models. They probably run complex algorithms to determine the exact optimal discount percentage to, trigger a sale without entirely erasing their margin.
Right, and their data might be 100% mathematically accurate within that narrow context. I mean, they figure out exactly how to source cheaper materials, they shave off cents on the dollar, and they optimize their entire supply chain for maximum cheapness.
Okay.
But what if their initial assumption was entirely false?
Right.
What if the customers weren't leaving because of price at all? What if they were leaving because the brand's quality had deteriorated? Or because their customer service was notoriously terrible? Or maybe because a new competitor offered a product that just actually solved the user's problem better?
Then the company literally just spent 2 years and millions of dollars using perfect data to accelerate their own demise.
Precisely.
They became highly efficient at a strategy that is actively killing their brand. They mapped the edge of the flat Earth with incredible precision, but they are still sailing in the wrong direction.
Which is why the most dangerous thing in a boardroom isn't the lack of data. It's the right answer to the wrong question. When a business fails, despite having done everything quote-unquote by the book, it is almost always because the book was written on a faulty premise. We try to out-analyze problems that were actually born from conceptual errors.
Man. So this means that if you are out there managing a team or launching a product, or even just trying to hit a quarterly goal, auditing your assumptions isn't just some philosophical exercise. It is literally the most critical operational step you can take before you spend a single dollar on research.
Absolutely.
But how do you actually do that? Because it's hard, right? How do you audit an assumption when it's the very water you are swimming in?
It's really difficult. It requires a deliberate, almost uncomfortable process of cognitive friction. You have to actively build mechanisms to challenge your own frame of reference. And one of the most effective ways a team can do this is by playing out the counterfactuals before a project even begins.
Okay, walk me through what that actually looks like in practice, because I want our listeners to be able to use this. Let's say we are a software company, and our core assumption is that adding a new social sharing feature will increase user retention.
Okay, good example. So the standard process would be, we assume the feature is good, so we collect data on user engagement, we A/B test the button color, and we launch it.
Right, the usual playbook.
Yeah, but to audit the assumption, you stop before any of that happens. You pause, look around the room, and ask, what would have to be true for this social sharing feature to completely destroy our user retention?
Wait, you force the team to argue against the core belief.
Exactly. You force them to imagine the absolute disaster scenario and then reverse engineer the causality. So someone might speak up and say, well, it would destroy retention if our users actually value our app because it's a private, isolated space away from social media.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Right? Suddenly, a massive blind spot is exposed.
Yeah.
You realize that your assumption that everyone everywhere wants more social connectivity might be fundamentally incompatible with your actual user base.
That's huge.
If you hadn't played out that counterfactual, you would have spent 6 months building a feature that actively alienated your best customers. And your data analytics team would just be sitting there, tracking the exodus, totally confused as to why the engagement metrics were tanking, despite the share button being the perfect shade of blue.
That is deeply unsettling because it reveals just how fragile our decision-making architecture really is.
Oh, it's terrifying.
Yeah. And we established that failures are often built on false assumptions. But if we follow this logic, this illusion of control gets really dangerous when things actually go right, doesn't it?
Honestly, this is the hardest reality for successful people to accept.
Really?
Yeah. Because when we fail, we're often forced to look in the mirror, even if we resist it at first. But when things go our way, when the product launches and sells out, or the marketing campaign goes viral, or the stock portfolio triples in value, we just naturally assume we know exactly why it happened.
Oh, of course we do.
We assume we hold the formula.
Right, because we want to be the hero of the story, but the reality is we might just be celebrating a telescope that happened to get bumped into the right position by a passing breeze.
I love that image.
Yes.
There is a brilliant scenario in the source material that perfectly illustrates this trap. Think about a retail investor, right? Just someone trading stocks with their own money. Oh yeah, we all know someone like this.
Exactly. Every dinner party has one. So this guy has a portfolio and he's constantly watching the ticker on his phone. Now, when the market goes his way, when his picks skyrocket and he makes a massive profit, what is the narrative he tells himself and everyone at the dinner table?
That he's a genius.
Right. He says it is because of his own raw intellect. It's his keen ability to read the macroeconomic trends, his intuition for undervalued tech startups, his superior analytical mind. He is the sole architect of his wealth.
But just watch what happens when the exact opposite occurs.
Right. 6 months later, the portfolio completely tanks. He loses a significant chunk of his net worth. Suddenly, the narrative shifts entirely. What's the reason now?
Oh, it's the Federal Reserve.
Yep, it's the Federal Reserve raising interest rates, it's unexpected geopolitical turmoil, it's market volatility, it's irrational institutional selling.
Everything but him.
Exactly. Suddenly, it has absolutely nothing to do with his intellect. He is a victim of circumstances far beyond his control.
This is a textbook example of fundamental attribution error. And it's wrapped up in profound cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
Because you cannot have it both ways. The logical architecture of his argument is completely broken. Either his success and his failure both hinge upon his own foresight and his own blindness, or they both hinge upon good and bad luck.
Right. He wants to claim ownership of the wins and sort of lease out the losses to the universe.
Exactly, because ego preservation is a powerful psychological drive. Claiming one cause for success like internal brilliance and an entirely different cause for failure like external market forces is a symptom of a deeply flawed foundational assumption.
And his assumption is basically, I am inherently a genius investor.
That's the one. Therefore, any data that supports that assumption, like a winning stock, is proof of the premise. But any data that contradicts that assumption, like a losing stock, well, that must be an anomaly caused by external interference.
It's such a dangerous way to live. But this isn't just about a guy nursing his ego at a cocktail party, right? This has catastrophic downstream effects on his actual financial future. Because if you attribute a random lucky success to your own brilliance, you are going to try to replicate that supposed brilliance in the future.
And that is exactly where the danger lies.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't actually know why the stock went up. I mean, maybe it was a brief short squeeze, maybe it was a rumor on a message board, or maybe it was just dumb luck.
Right.
He doesn't possess a repeatable formula.
Yeah.
He just possesses a lottery ticket that he mistakenly believes is a regular paycheck.
That's a great way to put it. So when he tries to apply his genius formula to the next trade, he leverages heavily, takes on massive risk, and just gets wiped out.
Yep.
Because his inability to predict the downturns with the same accuracy he claims for the upturns proves definitively that his assumption about his own skill level was entirely false.
Now, take that individual investor psychology and just scale it up to the executive suite of a multinational corporation.
Oh, man. That is terrifying to think about.
But it happens every single day. A company launches a product in a booming economy. Consumer spending is at an all-time high, credit is cheap, and the product just flies off the shelves.
Okay.
So the CEO stands in front of the shareholders and credits their innovative design, their brilliant marketing strategy, and their unmatched corporate culture. They hand out massive bonuses based on this internal brilliance.
And then inevitably a recession hits. Sales plummet.
And suddenly that same CEO is up there blaming the macroeconomic climate, supply chain issues, and shifting consumer demographics.
Right.
But if their design, marketing, and culture were truly the universal variables causing the success in the first place, they should have been able to weather the storm, or at least predict the downturn and pivot.
So if we can't trust our post-success data because our egos are constantly distorting the narrative, how do we ever learn what actually works? Because sometimes in business, you just don't have the data. Or you have data telling you one thing, but your gut feeling tells you another.
Yeah, that happens all the time.
You make a call, you go with your gut, and it worked out perfectly. It creates a massive win.
So are we saying that gut feelings are entirely invalid?
No, not at all. The business world is a constant, really delicate dance between rational, empirical analysis and intuitive, gut-level decision-making. Intuition is often just pattern recognition happening at a subconscious level faster than our conscious minds can articulate.
Right. Our brains are processing things we aren't even aware of.
Exactly. You can slice and dice the options in every conceivable direction, searching for an empirical safety net, but at the end of the day, someone has to make a leap.
But the danger is in what happens after the gut feeling pays off.
Precisely. If you launch a guerrilla marketing campaign on a hunch and it goes wildly viral, you cannot just look back and say, well, we used a talking dog in the video, therefore talking dogs are the absolute secret to virality.
Right. That's mistaking correlation for causality. Exactly. You're claiming prescience when you might have just stumbled into the right cultural moment. If you want to achieve 2020 foresight, if you really want to ensure repeatable success, you cannot blindly repeat a successful action without rigorously investigating why it worked.
You have to dig deeper.
You have to interrogate your own victories with the exact same brutal honesty you apply to your failures.
What does it look like to actually interrogate a success? Because usually, when a team wins, they just pop champagne and move on to the next quarter. Nobody wants to be the person in the debrief saying, hey, did we actually earn this or did we just get lucky?
Yeah, nobody wants to be a buzzkill. It requires a culture that genuinely values truth over validation. Let's stick with the viral marketing campaign example.
Okay.
To interrogate that success, you have to isolate the variables. Was it really the talking dog? Or was it the fact that the video was released at 8 in the morning on a Tuesday when your exact target demographic is commuting?
Oh, that makes sense.
Was it the specific phrasing of the call to action? Did a major influencer organically share it because it tapped into a broader cultural conversation that was happening that exact week?
So you have to strip away the assumptions and look at the actual mechanics of the event.
Because if you don't do that hard work of investigating the underlying chemistry of the success, you do not have a recipe. If you think the secret was just the talking dog, well, you will spend your entire marketing budget next year producing a dozen more talking dog videos, and they will all flop.
And you'll have no idea why.
Right. And you'll be sitting there,
Yeah.
just like the stock investor, totally confused and blaming the algorithm for your failure, when the reality is you never actually understood your success in the first place.
So if we realize that bad assumptions lead to failure, and unexplained successes lead to false confidence and eventual failure, how do we actually break the cycle? Like, if we can't trust the end of the process to tell us the truth, we basically have to stop looking at the end of the line and start looking at the beginning.
Yes. We have to shift our focus from managing the outcome to engineering the outcome.
Okay, there is a profound visual for this difference in the source material, a story about the auto industry that completely changed how I view leadership and problem solving.
Oh, the assembly line story.
Yes, it involves a group of American car executives taking a tour of a Japanese automobile assembly line.
This is honestly one of the most powerful metaphors for organizational behavior you will ever encounter.
It really is. So, picture the scene. The American executives are walking down the Japanese assembly line, just observing the process, and they get to the very end of the line, the point where the car doors are finally being attached to the hinges on the main body of the vehicle. It's the exact same stage of production they have back home in Detroit. But the American executives realize something is missing.
A very specific job role is totally absent.
Right. Because on the American assembly line, at this exact point in the process, there is a worker whose sole job is to stand there with a rubber mallet.
A rubber mallet.
Yeah. When the door is attached to the frame, it rarely fits perfectly right away. So this worker takes their rubber mallet and physically taps the edges of the metal door, manipulating it, bending it slightly until it sits flush within the frame.
Just whacking it into place.
Exactly. It's a standard operating procedure for them. But in the Japanese plant, this guy with the mallet doesn't exist. There are no mallets anywhere on the line.
So the Americans are naturally super confused.
Yes. They turn to their Japanese guy and ask, "We noticed you don't have anyone adjusting the doors. At what point in the process do you make sure the door fits perfectly?"
And this response is just legendary.
The Japanese guide looks at them, smiles sheepishly, and says, "We make sure it fits when we design it."
We make sure it fits when we design it. I mean, that single sentence represents a tectonic shift in how you view problem solving.
It completely reframes the whole concept of work. The American automakers, armed with their rubber mallets, they represent the default setting for how the vast majority of organizations and, honestly, individuals operate today.
Yeah, completely.
They run on a model of short-term tactics and reactionary management.
Think about the actual mechanics of the rubber mallet. The door is already manufactured, the frame is already built, they travel down the line, they are brought together, and there is a misalignment, a conflict. The system has produced a problem.
Right.
So what does the organization do? They introduce an external force, the mallet, to hammer the problem until it sort of resembles a solution.
It's a localized brute force fix to a systemic error.
Exactly. But let's look at the Japanese approach. They didn't arrive at the end of the line, see a gap in the door, and spend millions of dollars researching a better, softer rubber mallet.
They didn't innovate the mallet.
No. They didn't gather data on the optimal swinging angle for the worker. They didn't try to optimize the hammering process at all.
They realized the hammering process shouldn't exist in the first place.
Right. They recognize that a door not fitting is not an assembly problem. It is a design problem. They engineered the outcome they wanted from the very beginning. They adjusted the tolerances at the blueprint stage.
So it's fixed before it even starts.
Exactly. They ensured cross-functional communication between the team stamping the door and the team welding the frame long before a single piece of metal was actually cut.
They eliminated the problem at its genesis rather than managing the symptoms at the conclusion. But I want to push back on this a little bit on behalf of a pragmatic business owner listening right now. Let's play this out in the real world.
Okay.
Both of these cars, the American one and the Japanese one, roll off their respective assembly lines. They both get put on a truck, they both get shipped to a dealership, and they both get sold to a customer.
Yep.
When the customer walks up to that car on the lot and looks at the door, it appears to fit perfectly flush against the frame on both vehicles. If the end result looks exactly the same to the consumer, and they both result in a sale, why should an entrepreneur care whether their team used a mallet or a superior blueprint? Isn't the mallet just a slightly louder, maybe slightly more labor-intensive path to the exact same success?
That is the exact trap of outcome bias. You are evaluating the success of the process based entirely on the immediate, visible result on day one.
Right, because it looks fine.
It looks fine. But the true cost of the rubber mallet is entirely unseen, and it compounds over time.
Okay, walk me through the unseen costs.
Let's start with the physical reality of the car door. The American door, the one that was hammered into place, is resting inside that frame under immense physical stress.
Because it's been bent.
Exactly. The molecular structure of the metal has been manipulated and forced into a shape it wasn't originally designed to hold. It is fundamentally compromised.
So it looks flush, but is basically constantly fighting against its own geometry.
Exactly. Now fast forward 1,000 days. The car has been driven over potholes, exposed to freezing winters and scorching summers, and subjected to thousands of miles of vibration.
Real-world conditions.
Right. What happens to that door under stress? The structural integrity begins to fail, the door starts to rattle, the weather stripping begins to leak, the hinges wear out faster. And in the event of an accident, a door under stress might not absorb the impact the way the engineers originally calculated.
Oh, wow. Well, the Japanese door, which was designed to fit naturally, rests in the frame without any residual stress at all.
Yep.
It absorbs the vibrations of the road because it's operating exactly as intended. It doesn't rattle, it doesn't leak, and it maintains its integrity for years.
The mallet creates the illusion of a fit. Design creates actual structural integrity. And if we pull back from the literal car doors for a second, this is the ultimate dividing line between leaders who operate by default and leaders who operate by design.
Let's map this directly to organizational behavior. Because the rubber mallet isn't just a physical tool, right? It's a metaphor for almost every reactionary management tactic we use.
Think about hiring.
Oh, perfect example.
Right. A company needs to fill a role quickly. They find someone whose resume looks okay. But during the interview, there are clear red flags about their communication style and their alignment with the company's core values.
We've all seen this happen.
But the foundational assumption is, we just need a warm body to do this technical task. Culture doesn't really matter that much.
So they hire them, the door is attached to the frame, and immediately there's a misalignment.
The employee clashes with the team, projects get delayed due to infighting, morale just drops, the door does not fit the frame.
So what does the manager do?
Well, they don't fire the person and reevaluate their hiring criteria. They grab a mallet.
Right. They send them to a conflict resolution seminar. They start micromanaging their daily tasks. They implement a rigid new communication protocol for the whole team just to manage this one person's behavior.
They are swinging mallets. They are spending immense amounts of time, energy, and resources trying to force an employee to fit a culture they were never designed to fit in the first place.
And to the outside observer, maybe the team still hits their quarterly quota, right?
Exactly. The door looks flush.
But inside the team, everything is under stress.
The top performers are burned out from dealing with the constant friction, and eventually they quit. The unseen cost of that mallet is the complete destruction of the team's structural integrity.
You see this in sales and marketing constantly, too. Like, a company designs a product based on the assumption that they know what the customer wants, without actually investigating the user's core problem.
And it's all the time.
They manufacture thousands of units, the product hits the market, and nobody buys it.
The door doesn't fit the frame. The product doesn't fit the market.
So out come the mallets. The company launches a massive discount campaign. Buy one, get one free. Free shipping. They run aggressive high-pressure sales tactics. They basically hammer the consumer with incentives until the inventory finally starts to move.
Yep.
And at the end of the quarter, the VP of sales looks at the spreadsheet and says, look, we hit our revenue targets, the door fits.
But what is the unseen cost there? They have completely eroded their profit margins. They have trained their customer base to never buy their product at full price, which creates a transactional dependency rather than actual brand loyalty.
That's a huge hidden cost.
And most importantly, they have masked the fundamental flaw in the product design. Because they used a mallet to force the sale, they learned absolutely nothing about why the product failed organically. So next quarter, what happens? They will build another flawed product, and they will have to swing an even bigger mallet to sell it.
It is exhausting. Leading by default, constantly swinging these mallets, it requires an endless supply of energy and capital. You are perpetually fighting the reality of the situation, just trying to hammer the world to fit your flawed assumptions.
It is incredibly inefficient. The organizations that achieve compounding success, the ones that seem to get massive results with fewer resources, the ones that build enduring loyalty, they do not operate this way. They isolate the variables at the beginning. They lead by design.
So what does the vetting process actually look like when you lead by design? How do you ensure the door fits before you even cut the metal?
Well, you have to audit your assumptions at the blueprint stage. Let's take the hiring example again. A company leading by design doesn't just evaluate a resume. They define the exact cultural and behavioral requirements necessary for that specific team to function without stress.
They get super specific.
Yes. They design the interview process to test those specific traits, not just technical competence.
So if a candidate is technically brilliant but highly combative, and the team requires high-trust collaboration, the company recognizes the misalignment immediately.
They recognize that no matter how good the candidate's skills are, putting them on that team will require constant hammering. So they pass.
They just wait.
They wait for the candidate who naturally aligns with the environment. When that person is hired, they integrate seamlessly. They require zero mallets. The manager doesn't have to spend their time policing behavior. They can actually spend their time clearing roadblocks and facilitating actual growth.
It's the difference between managing friction and accelerating momentum. If you don't have to spend half your day swinging a mallet at a toxic employee, or a poorly designed product, or a misaligned marketing strategy, you can redirect all of that latent energy into innovation.
And that requires a tremendous amount of discipline. It is so much easier in the short term to just grab a mallet.
Oh, for sure.
It provides the immediate gratification of action. When there's a problem, swinging a hammer makes you feel like you're doing something to fix it. Reevaluating your blueprint feels like taking a step backward.
It goes back to the psychology of perceived truths we discussed at the very beginning. It is deeply unsettling to step back from the assembly line and admit, the reason this isn't working isn't because the worker is lazy or the mallet is too small. It's because the foundational assumption I made 3 years ago when I designed this company is wrong.
That takes profound humility. But if you don't have that humility, you will spend your entire career reacting to the symptoms of your own bad decisions.
I think we all do this in our personal lives too, not just in business. We construct this mental blueprint of how our relationship should look or how our career trajectory should unfold. We assume that if we follow a certain path, we will achieve a specific kind of happiness.
And when reality fails to align with that assumption, like when you get the promotion but you feel totally miserable or the relationship is constantly strained, the first instinct is rarely to question the blueprint.
No, we grab a mallet. We think, I just need to work harder. I just need to communicate more aggressively. I just need to buy a nicer house or go on a better vacation, and that will fix the underlying tension. We use short-term tactics to force our lives to resemble the picture in our heads.
And just like the car door, it might look okay from the outside for a little while, but the internal stress is building. You're manipulating your own life into a shape it wasn't meant to hold. True alignment, true structural integrity only happens when you are willing to look at the recurring problems in your life and ask, what if my foundational assumption about what I actually need is wrong?
This brings us back to the power of investigating anomalies. If you want to move away from the mallet approach, you really have to pay attention to the moments when things fit naturally.
Yes, absolutely. Imagine an American auto executive on that tour who happens to see one single door fit perfectly on the first try, without the worker needing to use the mallet.
Okay.
The default reaction would be to dismiss it as a fluke. Right, just a lucky coincidence.
But the leader who wants to engineer outcomes stops the line. They say, wait, why did that one specific door fit perfectly without any force?
And by investigating that success, by interrogating the anomaly, they might discover that the specific batch of metal used for that frame was stamped at a slightly different temperature, creating a tighter tolerance.
Oh, interesting.
Suddenly, they haven't just celebrated a fluke. They've discovered a new principle of design. They've found a way to eliminate the mallet entirely.
Don't just accept that the door fit. Ask why it fit. Because if you don't know the mechanics of your success, you are just gambling. You are relying on luck and calling it leadership.
Which brings us to the core synthesis of this entire discussion, I think. The soul of decision-making, whether you are running a multinational corporation, leading a small team, or just trying to navigate your own career, it all boils down to a fundamental choice in how you wield your agency.
Right. Every goal you set, every metric you track, every instruction you give to another human being begins with an assumption. You can choose to blindly accept that assumption as an absolute truth. You can choose to gather endless amounts of data that only confirm your pre-existing biases, basically mapping the edges of a flat Earth.
And if you make that choice, you commit yourself to a life of reactionary management. You will spend your time and your energy swinging rubber mallets, using brute force and short-term manipulation to constantly beat the world into a shape that temporarily resembles your flawed blueprint.
It sounds exhausting.
You might survive, and you might even look successful on the outside for a while, but your structure will be under constant stress, just waiting for the first sign of a storm to fracture.
Or you can choose a different path. You can choose to cultivate the discipline and the humility to continuously audit your own foundational beliefs. You can refuse to take credit for successes you don't understand and refuse to blame the universe for failures you engineered.
You can choose to stop solving problems at the end of the line and start isolating variables at the beginning. You can build your business, your products, and your teams with the unseen structural integrity that only comes from true alignment. You can choose to lead by design.
It is the difference between surviving through exhaustion and thriving through intentionality.
The truth is always going to reveal itself eventually. The Earth was round long before anyone had the courage to sail across it. The people who are willing to question their own perceived truths are the ones who end up discovering new continents, while everyone else stays safely at home, paralyzed by the fear of falling off an edge that doesn't even exist.
That is incredibly well said. So if you're listening to this as you go back to your work, your projects, and your teams today, I want to leave you with this thought to mull over. Look for the friction. If you find yourself constantly swinging a rubber mallet at a recurring problem if you are always having the same argument with a partner, perpetually micromanaging the same employee, or constantly discounting a product just to keep it alive, ask yourself, what is the flat earth assumption you made at the very beginning of that process that is forcing you to keep hammering?
Because until you fix the blueprint, you will never be able to put down the mallet. And speaking of mallets, next time we're going to look at the exact tools leaders use when they rely on brute force, the carrots, the sticks, and the hidden long-term costs of manipulating human behavior. What if practically every decision you make as a consumer, and honestly, every strategy you rely on as a business owner, is based entirely on manipulation?
It's a profoundly jarring thought when you first confront it.
Couple it.
But, I mean, when you look really closely at the mechanics of the modern marketplace, you realize there are fundamentally only two ways to influence human behavior.
Right.
You can inspire it or you can manipulate it.
And today, we're taking a deep dive into the invisible strings that, pull our wallets open.
Yeah, the things we don't even see happening.
Exactly. We're looking at the core ideas from the carrots and sticks chapter of our source material, diving into pages 22 through 40.
It's such a crucial section.
It really is. We're going to break down the actual mechanics of these carrots and sticks, specifically how tactics like price drops, fear, peer pressure, and aspirational messaging, how they drive our behavior every single day.
And maybe more importantly, we're going to uncover why relying on those tactics is actually a super dangerous, exhausting shortcut.
Because it destroys long-term loyalty.
It's completely destroys it.
So for everyone listening, if you want to escape this sort of transactional treadmill, or if you want to build a sustainable business, or honestly, if you just want to genuinely understand why you buy what you buy, this deep dive is for you.
Absolutely. And to really get into this, we have to establish a really uncomfortable truth about the market today.
Okay, lay it on me.
We live in an era of unprecedented commoditization.
Meaning everything is kind of the same.
Exactly. There is barely a product or a service out there right now that you cannot buy from someone else for roughly the same price.
Right.
The same quality, the same level of service, and with the exact same features.
It's wild because companies always claim they're unique.
They do. But the romanticized idea of a first mover advantage, that's practically a myth today.
It just disappears.
It's lost in a matter of months, sometimes weeks. Like if you offer something truly novel, someone else is going to reverse engineer it. And they'll offer something similar, maybe even slightly better, almost immediately.
Okay, I want to pause on that for a second, because I think that creates a massive blind spot for businesses.
Oh, a huge one.
Like if you walk into the boardroom of any major corporation and ask the executives, why do people buy your products? They almost always point to their features.
Yep, for 10.
They falsely assume it's because of their superior functionality.
Yeah.
Or their unmatched customer service.
Which is almost never the actual differentiator.
Right. Because if everything is commoditized, that can't be true.
Exactly.
And if they have absolutely no clue why their customers are actually choosing them, it totally follows that they probably don't know why their employees are working for them either.
No, they don't. They lack a really fundamental understanding of their own appeal.
Which is kind of terrifying if you're running a massive company.
It is. And because they lack that understanding, they have to rely on manipulations to force transactions to happen.
Because they literally don't know what else to do.
Right. They don't know how to attract people naturally, so they have to bribe them or scare them into acting.
Wow.
Which brings us to a crucial distinction we need to make right away, and that's the absolute difference between repeat business and loyalty.
Okay, but, and I think a lot of people listening might be thinking this, on a spreadsheet, those look exactly the same.
Right.
Customer comes back, they buy again, the revenue goes up. It looks like a win.
They look identical on a quarterly earnings report. But psychologically, neurologically, they are entirely different beasts.
Break that down for me.
So repeat business is simply when people do business with you multiple times. It's just a series of transactions. And it's almost always driven by continuous manipulation.
Like a sale.
Exactly. You drop the price, they buy.
Yeah.
You offer a rebate, they buy.
But loyalty is different.
Loyalty is a completely different emotional state. Loyalty is when people are willing to turn down a better product or turn down a better price to continue doing business with you.
Because they actually care about the company.
Right. Loyal customers often do not even bother to research the competition.
That's the real test, isn't it?
It is. They aren't looking for the best deal. They're looking to maintain the relationship.
It's kind of like the difference between renting an apartment and owning a home.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right.
Right.
Like when you rent, you're always keeping an eye on the market. If a cheaper, nicer apartment opens up down the street, you just move.
Because there's no attachment.
Exactly.
Yep.
That's repeat business. You stay as long as the terms are favorable.
Right.
But when you own a home, you invest in it.
Yeah.
Even if a slightly cheaper house goes up for sale nearby, you don't instantly abandon yours because your attachment goes way beyond the purely transactional.
That is a perfect analogy. And to build on that, think about a childhood playground.
Okay, taking it back to the playground.
Imagine two kids negotiating. One says to the other, "Hey, I'll be your best friend if you give me this piece of candy."
A classic move.
It is. And it's a highly effective, fairly benign manipulation. The kid gets the candy.
Right.
But what happens when the candy is gone?
The friendship completely evaporates.
Instantly. The crazy thing is, we have Fortune 500 companies doing the exact same thing on a massive billion-dollar scale.
That's so true.
They are essentially saying, "I'll be your best friend if you buy this product," and they just hand out candy in the form of price drops and promotions.
And what's fascinating to me is that the word manipulation usually carries this like sinister, pejorative connotation.
Yeah, we think of it as evil.
We think of James Bond villains or shadowy figures in a smoke-filled room.
Right. Well,
But in the business context, manipulation is just standard operating procedure.
it's just marketing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
From local retail to global politics, manipulations run totally rampant. We're talking about dropping the price, running a promotion, using fear, leveraging peer pressure.
We're promising shiny new innovations.
Right. They're the absolute bedrock of modern sales.
They are.
But let me play devil's advocate here, because I think anyone listening who runs a business is probably thinking, okay, but it works.
And they're right. It does work.
If manipulation works and the numbers definitively prove it drives sales, why shouldn't a business just accept that and play the game?
It's a fair question.
Isn't business, at the end of the day, just about getting the transaction? If the playground kid gets the candy, didn't the tactic succeed?
It succeeded in the short term, yes. And that is exactly the trap.
That's a short term.
Manipulations absolutely work to drive a transaction. But there is a massive hidden cost that doesn't show up on a balance sheet until it's way too late.
So let's get into the carrots, the positive manipulations.
Let's do it. Let's look at the most common carrot businesses use. The price drop.
The classic sale.
Selling based on price is, and the source text is clear on this, it's literally like heroin for a business.
Okay, wow. Comparing a discount to a highly addictive narcotic is a pretty heavy claim.
That is.
Walk me through the actual mechanics of that. How is a 20% off sale like heroin?
The physiological and organizational mechanics are actually strikingly similar.
Really?
Think about what happens when a company drops its price. They get an immediate hit of sales.
Right, everyone rushes in to buy.
Their revenue spikes. And the executives feel this rush of success. Literally, dopamine hits their brains as the numbers go up.
So they get high off the sales spike.
Exactly. The short-term gain feels fantastic. But just like a narcotic, the more you do it, the harder it becomes to kick the habit.
Because you build up a tolerance.
Yes.
It's like caffeine, right?
Right.
When you first start drinking coffee, 1 cup gives you the jitters. You're wired.
Right.
But a year later, 1 cup does absolutely nothing. So you need 2 just to feel normal. Eventually, you're drinking 4 cups a day just to stave off the withdrawal headache.
That's a great way to look at it.
Is that what happens to the customers? Do they build a tolerance to the discount?
Precisely. Buyers get addicted to the low price. Their baseline expectation totally shifts.
They just get used to it.
They get used to paying a lower than average amount. And it becomes incredibly hard to ever get them to pay full price again.
Like, why would I buy a sweater on Tuesday for $100 if I know it'll be $60 on Friday?
Exactly. If you train a customer to only buy your product when it's 30% off, they aren't loyal to your product.
They're loyal to the discount.
Yes. And for the sellers, the situation becomes dire. To keep getting that hit of sales, they face this overwhelming pressure to push prices lower and lower to compete.
And their margins just shrink.
As they do this, their profit margins get cut slimmer and slimmer.
And to compensate for those razor-thin margins, they have to sell an exponentially higher volume.
Which means they have to drop the price again.
To attract more buyers. It's a complete downward spiral.
It is.
They become junkies. And they reduce their own beautifully designed, hard-earned products into mere commodities.
Let's look at a historical giant that played this game, Walmart.
Oh, the ultimate price player.
Walmart built a phenomenally successful business by playing the price game better than anyone else in history.
Everyday low prices.
Exactly. Their sheer scale allowed them to avoid some of the inherent weaknesses of a pure price strategy because they could just bully suppliers into lowering costs.
Right. They were big enough to dictate terms.
But that obsession with everyday low prices came at a very high cost to the company's soul over the years.
Wow, so.
Well, they faced massive scandals regarding employee treatment, healthcare benefits, and overseas labor practices.
I remember that. It was constantly in the news.
And why did that happen? Because every one of those scandals was born from their relentless, addictive need to keep costs down so they could afford to offer those rock-bottom prices.
Wow. So price always costs something somewhere in the chain.
Always.
You might not pay for it at the cash register, but the employees pay for it, the suppliers pay for it, or the actual quality of the product pays for it.
Someone is paying the difference.
You really have to ask yourself, how much are you willing to pay for the money you make?
That is the ultimate question. And that brings us to the close cousin of the price drop. The promotion.
Right.
The 2-for-1, the free toy inside, the cashback guarantee.
Oh, you see them everywhere.
We are so saturated by them, we honestly forget we're being actively manipulated.
Let's look at the auto industry here, because the source text provides a perfect historical case study regarding General Motors.
Yes, GM is the textbook example of this.
So back in the 1950s, GM was an absolute titan. They dominated the U.S. auto market. They were the undisputed king.
They own the roads?
But fast forward a few decades, and they faced this massive onslaught of competition, particularly from Japanese automakers like Toyota.
Who were bringing really reliable, affordable cars to the States.
Exactly. And the numbers are staggering. Between 1990 and 2007, Toyota's market share in the U.S. more than doubled. It hit 16.3%.
Which is huge.
Meanwhile, GM's share was bleeding out. It plummeted from 35% all the way down to 23.8%.
And in corporate boardrooms, that kind of market share loss induces sheer panic.
I can imagine.
So GM panicked. They scrambled to hold on to their dwindling status. And instead of figuring out why customers were leaving them for Toyota,
They turned to the carrot.
they turned to the carrot. They started offering massive cashback incentives to customers.
Like how massive?
We are talking anywhere from $500 to $7,000 just for buying their cars and trucks.
$7,000 cash back.
Yes.
And the tragic part is the tactic actually worked brilliantly at first, right?
It did. Sales rose.
Because the promotion did exactly what a manipulation is engineered to do. It forced a transaction.
The executives probably high-fived each other, thinking they had totally solved the Toyota problem.
We fixed it.
We're back on top. But let's analyze the long-term fallout, the withdrawal symptoms of that heroin hit.
Okay.
Those massive incentives dramatically eroded GM's profit margins. It got to the point where, by 2007, GM wasn't just making less money, they were actively bleeding it.
The text mentions a specific number here, doesn't it?
Yes. They were losing $729 on every single vehicle they sold.
Wait. Let me get this straight. They were essentially paying people $729 to drive their cars off the lot.
When you look at the raw math, yes.
That is madness.
It's totally unsustainable. The business model became completely broken. They were subsidizing their own market share.
And they couldn't keep that up forever.
Exactly. When they finally realized they couldn't sustain the bleeding, they announced they had to reduce the cashback incentives. And what happened?
I'm guessing sales plummeted.
Immediately, because they hadn't built loyalty to GM cars. They had built loyalty to GM cash.
Wow. They trained their customers to expect a handout.
They created an entire customer base of cashback junkies who firmly believe there was no such thing as paying full price for an American car.
So that's a massive multi-billion-dollar promotion example. But here's where the psychology gets really fascinating and, frankly, kind of devious on a smaller scale.
Retail rebate.
Yes, retail rebates. Have you ever bought, like, a printer or a kitchen appliance because the box said $50 mail-in rebate?
Oh, absolutely.
And you think to yourself, wow, what a steal. I'm so smart.
You feel like you beat the system.
Right. But the retail industry actually has formal, calculated terms for the psychology behind this, don't they?
They do. They call it breakage and slippage.
Breakage and slippage.
This is where the manipulative nature of promotions is fully exposed. A rebate is technically a price drop, but it is a price drop wrapped in intentional friction.
Explain breakage.
Breakage is the actual industry metric that measures the percentage of customers who fail to take advantage of a promotion and just end up paying full price anyway.
And they design it to break.
They absolutely do.
Retailers purposefully make the rebate process agonizingly complicated.
It's a maze.
You have to cut out a tiny specific barcode from the cardboard box.
With an X-Acto knife, basically.
Right. And then you have to find your original itemized receipt, fill out a detailed form in black ink only, of course.
Naturally.
And mail it in perfectly before some super strict deadline. If you send in the wrong part of the box, or if you miss one tiny detail, they just void it.
Because the company is betting against your follow-through.
It's so cynical.
It is. And then there is slippage.
It's slippage.
Slippage is the term for the customers who just don't bother to apply at all. Or maybe they do everything right, they receive the rebate check in the mail 6 weeks later, and they just forget to cash it before it expires.
Because that's a check for like $15 and it sits on your kitchen counter.
Exactly. And the data shows that nearly 40% of customers never get the lower price they thought they were paying.
40%. That is effectively a tax on the disorganized.
It really is a tax on human nature.
We buy the product because our brain gives us the dopamine hit of that $50 off promise while we're standing in the aisle.
The perceived risk of the purchase is lowered.
Right. But the company knows that by the time we get home, the effort required to actually get that $50 far outweighs the immediate reward.
It is free money for the seller. It is manipulation at its absolute best.
It's so sneaky.
It lures the customer in with the promise of a lower price, but builds a relationship based on friction, hurdles, and technicalities.
And it breeds zero loyalty.
None. Because if a customer realizes they missed out on the rebate because of a technicality, they don't blame themselves.
No, they resent the company.
Deeply.
So we've seen how companies bribe us with discounts and promotions. They use the carrots.
Right.
But when they can't afford to bribe us anymore, or when the carrots just lose their flavor, they tap into something much darker.
And far more primal.
Exactly. They tap into our survival instincts to force our hand. This brings us to the sticks.
And the heaviest stick of all is fear.
Fear.
Fear is arguably the most potent manipulator in the human arsenal because it is so deeply seated in our biology.
It overrides everything else.
It does. When the amygdala, which is the fear center of our brain, is triggered, the prefrontal cortex, which handles logic and rational thought, is essentially bypassed.
It just shuts down.
Basically, yes. When fear takes over, facts, figures, and data become entirely incidental.
To illustrate this, the source text uses an amazing analogy. The bank robber with a banana in his pocket.
I love this analogy.
So imagine someone walks into a bank, they point a bulging pocket at the teller, and they demand money.
Right?
If they get caught, they will be charged with armed robbery.
Yep.
In the eyes of the law, and in the biology of the victims, it does not matter that it was literally a piece of fruit.
It could have been an apple.
Right. The victims were never in actual physical danger of being shot.
But they didn't know that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is the belief of danger that motivates them to comply. The robber took intentional steps to make the victims afraid, knowing that fear would manipulate their behavior instantly and predictably.
And that mechanism, creating the belief of danger to force compliance, is used constantly in the corporate world.
Give me an example.
Let's look at a phrase that dominated corporate procurement for decades. No one ever got fired for hiring IBM.
Oh, man. I love dissecting that phrase because it is a behavior completely born out of fear, but it masquerades as logic.
Yes. Imagine an employee in a corporate IT department.
Okay.
Their job is to find the best, most efficient software for the company.
Right. That's what they're paid to do.
They go out, they do the research, and they find a brilliant, cheaper, faster product from an unknown startup.
Sounds like a win.
But they turn it down, and they sign a massive, expensive contract with IBM instead. Why?
Because they are terrified.
They're terrified of the career consequences. It's the real or perceived fear that if the unknown startup software crashes, their boss will blame them for taking a risk.
Why did you buy from these nobodies?
Exactly. But if IBM software crashes, they can say, hey, it's IBM, they're the gold standard, it's not my fault.
So they ignore the express purpose of their job, which is to find the best solution, just to protect their own survival in the corporate hierarchy.
IBM didn't even have to have the best product. They just had to represent safety from being fired.
That is a massive stick.
It is. And because fear is so primal, it cannot be quickly wiped away with facts and figures.
We see this tactic used to shape public behavior all the time, beyond just corporate buying.
Oh, everywhere.
Think back to those infamous 1980s anti-drug public service announcements.
The egg.
Yes. The man holding an egg saying, "This is your brain," and then he cracks it into a sizzling frying pan. This is your brain on drugs.
Such a visceral
Or that print ad that boldly stated, "Cocaine doesn't make you sexy, it makes you dead."
Right. Those weren't nuanced public health discussions about addiction mechanics or brain chemistry.
Not at all.
They were blunt instruments attempting to scare people into compliance.
And we absolutely must acknowledge how this operates in the political sphere, too.
Definitely. And, just to be incredibly clear for you listening, we are looking at this strictly as an analysis of the psychological mechanics of messaging.
Right. This is completely independent of any political ideology. We aren't taking sides here.
Exactly. But the mechanic is identical across the spectrum no matter who is using it.
Oh, totally. You will have one politician claiming their opponent's policies will devastate the economy and leave your family destitute.
And you will have another politician claiming their opponent's policies will dismantle law enforcement and put your physical safety at risk.
The core mechanism is exactly the same.
They are seeding fear.
They are bypassing the rational brain and speaking directly to the amygdala.
They are using a proverbial gun to your head or a banana in a pocket to force a choice at the ballot box.
Everyday businesses do this constantly to agitate our insecurities, too.
Oh, for sure. You see the local cardiac specialist running a billboard saying, every 36 seconds, someone dies of a heart attack.
Or the home inspection service with a truck wrap that reads, "Do you have radon in your basement? Your neighbor does."
That one is great because it combines fear with peer pressure.
It does. Or even the life insurance industry, subtly reminding you to buy a policy to protect your kids before it's too late.
It is a really powerful, heavy stick used to move us away from a horrible hypothetical outcome.
But sticks aren't just about primal terror of death or ruin, are we?
No, they also utilize our need for social survival. Which brings us to peer pressure.
Now, I have to ask about this, because we are inherently social creatures.
Right.
Isn't looking to experts or looking at what the majority is doing just a biological shortcut for our brains to save energy?
It is. It's a heuristic.
Like if I'm walking through a strange city and I see a restaurant packed with locals, while the one right next door is totally empty, I'm going to choose the crowded one.
Natural.
It's a shortcut. If everyone else is doing it, it's usually safe. So at what point does a helpful recommendation cross the line into manipulative peer pressure?
That's a really crucial distinction. The heuristic you mentioned, choosing the busy restaurant, is based on gathering evidence to make a good choice.
Okay.
Peer pressure, on the other hand, works not necessarily because we believe the majority or the experts are undeniably correct.
Then why does it work?
It works because we fundamentally fear being wrong and being isolated.
The fear of being the odd one out.
Evolutionarily, if you are cast out of the tribe, you died. We are hardwired to conform to avoid isolation. Marketers totally weaponize this fear of missing out or the fear of looking foolish.
4 out of 5 dentists prefer Trident.
With over 1 million satisfied customers and counting.
Exactly. They are attempting to sway the buyer by leveraging that deep-seated anxiety.
Are you really going to go against the experts? Are you going to be the one weird person who isn't using our product?
Celebrity endorsements play right into this social pressure, too.
Heavily. If this elite person uses it, it must be the standard.
Let's look at Tiger Woods for a second.
Okay.
During his absolute peak, it made perfect sense for him to endorse Nike golf clubs.
Sure. He's a golfer. The clubs are tools of his trade.
Right. But Tiger also endorsed General Motors cars, management consulting firms, and this is my favorite, a Tag Heuer watch.
The watch campaign is fascinating.
It was heavily marketed as being designed especially for the golfer.
Yes, and the campaign is brilliant in its manipulation. They advertised that the watch could withstand a 5,000-gram shock.
Which sounds like an incredible feat of engineering.
And it is. But when you look at the actual physics of a golf swing, that 5,000-gram shock is the level of force experienced by the golf ball at the moment of impact.
Wait, not the golfer?
No, not the golfer's wrist. The golfer's wrist experiences a tiny fraction of that force.
So the feature was essentially meaningless for the person wearing the watch.
Completely meaningless. But Tiger Woods endorsed it, so consumers felt a social pressure to believe it was elite, necessary equipment for a serious golfer.
Or consider the actor Sam Waterston.
Oh, this is a great example.
He's famous for playing a brilliant principled prosecutor on the show Law and Order.
Right.
A few years ago, he was the spokesman for TD Ameritrade, selling online financial trading platforms.
Which is wild when you think about it.
What does an actor who reads scripts about criminal law have to do with the complex world of financial day trading?
Absolutely nothing.
Nothing. But because he spent a decade projecting trustworthiness and authority into our living rooms, marketers use that persona to pressure consumers into feeling safe handing over their retirement savings.
We see this in B2B sales constantly, too.
Wow. How so?
A sales rep will sit across a desk from a manager and drop the ultimate peer pressure line. 70% of your competitors are currently using our service. Why aren't you?
Oh, that is brutal.
It works so well.
It makes the manager panic. They instantly think they are missing the boat, that they are falling behind.
Right. But if we step back and think rationally, what if 70% of your competitors are just idiots?
Seriously. Or what if they only bought the software because they were offered a massive unsustainable discount at the end of a quarter?
The sales rep isn't offering actual evidence of quality. They are designing a trap to pressure you to buy out of fear of falling behind the pack.
It honestly reminds me of the classic mother's rebuttal. If all your friends put their heads in the oven, would you do that too?
It's humorous, but it's true. And honestly, if a major sneaker brand paid a global superstar to put their head in an oven in a highly stylized commercial, it might actually start a trend.
It probably would.
That is the sheer irrational power of peer pressure. It completely bypasses rational analysis and directly attacks our biological desire to belong to the winning tribe.
Okay, so we have the carrots, which bribe us with price drops and promotions.
Yes.
We have the sticks, which force our hand with fear and peer pressure.
Right.
But there's a third category of manipulation we really need to explore. And we can think of these as the illusions.
The illusions.
These are the tactics that don't bribe or threaten us, but rather tempt us with who we want to be, or they distract us with shiny new objects.
Let's start with aspirations.
Aspirations.
Aspirational messages are essentially the psychological flip side of fear.
How so?
If fear motivates us to run away from something horrible, aspirational messages tempt us to run towards something highly desirable.
6 steps to a happier life.
In 6 short weeks, you can have a 6-figure income.
We've all clicked those links.
We all have. They tempt us with the things we want to possess or the idealized version of the person we wish we were.
Mark Twain had a fantastic quote that perfectly captures the weakness of aspirational manipulations. He said, "Quitting smoking is the easiest thing I've ever done. I've done it hundreds of times."
That is exactly the issue.
They don't stick.
No. Aspirational messages are incredibly effective at getting us to take the first step.
They get us to buy the book.
Yeah.
Or sign up for the course.
Right. But they are terrible at creating lasting, sustainable behavior. They work best on those who lack discipline or who harbor a nagging insecurity that they cannot achieve their dreams on their own.
Think about the fitness industry.
The ultimate aspirational market.
Every single January, gym memberships predictably spike by about 12%.
New Year's resolution.
Exactly. People are fulfilling a resolution. They see an aspirational ad showing a ridiculously fit person, and the message gets them to swipe their credit card.
And their brain actually gives them a dopamine reward just for buying the membership.
Really?
Yes. It tricks them into feeling like they've already achieved the goal just by paying the money.
But we all know what happens by March.
The gym is empty again.
Only a tiny fraction of those people are still showing up. You can manipulate someone to buy the membership with a promise of a dream body, but it requires actual internal inspiration to get them to wake up at 5 a.m. and go to the gym 3 days a week for a year.
That takes more than an ad. And this phenomenon isn't limited to consumer diets and gyms either.
Does it happen in the corporate world?
It plagues the corporate world. There are management consultants who build entire careers around this.
Fascinating.
A consultant working for a billion-dollar company observed that the managers were always drawn to the quicker, cheaper option to fulfill their corporate aspirations.
Instead of doing the hard work.
Right. Rather than investing in the better but much harder long-term solution, they acted just like habitual yo-yo dieters.
We'll just do this quick fix.
The consultant noted, and this is a great quote, "They never have the time or money to do it right the first time, but they always have the time and money to do it again."
Wow.
It is a series of short-term responses to a long-term desire.
Which leads seamlessly, or rather practically trips over itself into the next illusion. Novelty.
Novelty is a massive trap.
Because companies constantly disguise novelty as innovation.
To understand the difference, we have to look really closely at the product life cycle.
Okay, let's look at a classic case study from the text. The Motorola RAZR.
The RAZR.
In 2004, Motorola released the RAZR.
I had one. Everyone had one.
They put out press releases heralding it as a major innovation in design and engineering. They bragged about its aircraft-grade aluminum body, an internal antenna, and a chemically etched flat keypad.
It was incredibly thin, metallic, and futuristic.
And it was an absolute cultural phenomenon. It was a massive hit. Celebrities flaunted it on the red carpet. Prime ministers were photographed using it.
They sold over 50 million units.
The CEO at the time, Ed Zander, was taking victory laps, saying the phone represented Motorola's long history of revolutionary innovations.
But look at the timeline.
What had happened?
Less than 4 years later, that same CEO was forced out.
4 years? That's nothing.
The company's stock had lost 50% of its value.
How does that happen so fast?
Because competitors had easily reverse-engineered the RAZR. They added their own features, surpassed it, and Motorola was right back to fighting for scraps in a commoditized market.
Because it wasn't actually an innovation.
Exactly. They confused innovation with novelty.
It's like putting a carbon fiber spoiler on a standard 10-speed bicycle and calling it a revolution in human transportation.
That's a perfect analogy. That's a novelty.
It looks cool. It might make people buy the bike for a week, but it doesn't fundamentally change how the bike works.
No. Inventing the automobile, that's an innovation.
Right. Real innovation changes the course of industries, or even society.
The invention of the light bulb, the microwave oven.
The creation of iTunes.
iTunes is a great example. It completely dismantled and rebuilt the music industry's business model.
The Motorola RAZR was just a collection of great features.
It was a shiny object. It drove sales temporarily, but the impact didn't last because it didn't fundamentally alter the user's life or the industry structure.
Compare that to what Apple did with the iPhone.
Right. Because removing the physical buttons and adding a touch screen isn't actually what made the iPhone a true innovation.
People forget that touchscreens already existed.
They did. Those are just features that Samsung or LG could and did copy.
So what made it an innovation?
What made the iPhone an innovation was how Apple used it to violently shift the entire balance of power in the telecom industry.
Explain that dynamic.
Before the iPhone, service providers like AT&T and Verizon dictated terms to the phone manufacturers.
The carriers had all the power.
The carriers told Motorola and Nokia what the phones would do, what features they were allowed to have, and what software they would run.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
Apple showed up and completely reversed the power dynamic. They told the service provider what the phone would do and that Apple would retain control over the user experience.
And AT&T just agreed.
AT&T agreed because they wanted the exclusive deal. And the industry was forever altered.
That structural shift is true innovation.
Exactly. The RAZR was just a shiny commodity.
And if you don't understand that difference, and you constantly add novelties to your business to drive short-term sales, you are actively treating your own product like a commodity.
You get caught in this exhausting cycle. You have to invent the next shiny new feature just to stay relevant for another quarter.
Let's look at a product we all use to illustrate this. Colgate toothpaste.
Oh, this is the best example of decision fatigue.
Think about the last time you stood in the toothpaste aisle at the grocery store.
It's overwhelming.
It is anxiety-inducing. There's a wall of boxes. But in the 1970s, there were only 2 types of Colgate toothpaste.
Only 2. It sounds almost utopian.
It does. But as competition increased, rather than finding a way to inspire loyalty, they introduced a novelty to stand out.
They added fluoride.
Right, and it worked for a bit. Sales spiked. Then a competitor added baking soda, so Colgate added whitening.
Then tartar control.
Then sparkles. Then green stripes.
Today, there are over 32 different types of Colgate toothpaste.
32. And their competitors have matched them step for step. Dozens and dozens of toothpastes, all offering about the exact same benefits at about the exact same price.
And here is the absolute kicker.
Right.
There is absolutely no data to show that Americans are brushing their teeth more frequently or more effectively now than they were in the 1970s.
You're kidding.
Not at all. All this frantic multi-million-dollar innovation hasn't actually changed the core human behavior.
It's just stressed us out.
Massively. We
Yeah.
have massive decision fatigue over something that should take 5 seconds to buy.
It has gotten so absurd that Colgate literally had to put a link on their website called Need Help Deciding to guide people through their own product line.
If your company has to build a diagnostic tool to help customers navigate your 32 novelties, you haven't innovated.
You have just created a massive headache for the consumer.
That is the ultimate takeaway regarding novelty. It might spike a sale for a quarter, but it rarely, if ever, cements a loyal, lasting relationship.
It just adds clutter.
Clutter, confusion, and stress.
So we've looked at the complete arsenal.
We have.
We've looked at the carrots of price and promotions. We've looked at the sticks of fear and peer pressure. We've looked at the illusions of aspirations and novelty.
Now I need to step back.
Right, we need to look at the macro fallout. When an entire economy is running on these manipulative engines, what is the actual price we pay for the money we make?
Well, to be fair, and to look at this objectively, manipulations are perfectly valid in specific, isolated scenarios.
They aren't inherently evil.
No. They are the exact right tool for a single rare transaction where long-term loyalty is entirely unnecessary.
Like the lost kitten scenario.
Yes, lost kitten.
If you lose your kitten, you don't need to build a lifelong, inspiring, deeply meaningful relationship with a stranger who finds it in an alley.
That would be weird.
Very weird. You just print out a poster, staple it to a telephone pole, and offer a $500 cash reward.
You use a carrot.
You want a single transaction, your cat back. And you are more than willing to pay for it. You don't care if you never see that person again.
The police use the same tactic with reward money for anonymous tips on crimes.
Right. It works beautifully when you only need a specific behavior to happen one time.
But the profound danger arises when you try to take a tool designed for a single transaction like finding a cat and use it to build an entire business model.
Or an entire global economy.
Exactly. When you actually need a loyal, lasting relationship, whether that is a customer who stays with you for decades through thick and thin, or an employee who gives you their best, most creative ideas instead of just punching a clock, manipulations fail catastrophically.
And there is no better or more tragic case study of this systemic failure than the 2008 financial crisis.
The ultimate systemic failure.
This wasn't just a market correction. This was a systemic collapse because an entire global industry was running exclusively on short-term manipulation.
The collapse of the housing market and the banking industry was the ultimate manifestation of a culture built entirely on transactions.
With absolutely zero loyalty to the whole system.
Let's look at the biology and psychology inside the banks at that time.
Okay.
The traders and executives were aggressively manipulated by massive short-term financial bonuses.
The ultimate carrots.
When you dangle a multi-million-dollar bonus in front of someone for closing a high-risk deal this quarter, you flood their brain with dopamine.
And that changes them.
That neurochemical surge physically alters their risk assessment. They become literally blind to the long-term systemic consequences of their actions.
They only see the immediate reward.
And they used sticks to enforce it, too. It wasn't just greed, it was fear.
Also.
In those environments, there was an open, aggressive shaming of anyone who spoke out or questioned the logic.
Oh.
If a risk manager raised a red flag about toxic mortgages, they were ridiculed, marginalized, or pushed out of the company.
That is the darkest form of peer pressure and fear working in tandem.
Conform to the risky behavior or be isolated.
Meanwhile, they were manipulating the consumers on the other side of the equation, too.
They flooded the market with a free flow of easy, subprime loans.
Tempting the aspirational desires of home buyers, convincing people to buy houses they fundamentally could not afford.
It was a massive house of cards built entirely on carrots and sticks.
There was no underlying cause, no belief in sustainable home ownership.
No loyalty beyond the instant gratification of the closing fee.
And so when the money dried up, when the interest rates ticked up and the easy carrots disappeared, the whole system buckled.
There was no foundation of trust or loyalty to hold it up.
The American car industry faced the exact same reality during that era. They had relied on promotions, rebates, and incentives for decades to push cars off the lot.
But when the 2008 oil crisis hit and the economy slowed down, those manipulations became far too expensive to sustain.
Because they hadn't built any true loyalty. When the free flow of money stopped, the customers vanished instantly.
But beyond the catastrophic systemic economic collapse, we really have to look at the deeply personal biological toll this takes on us as human beings.
Right, the everyday cost.
We are swimming in a sea of manipulations every single day.
Just trying to buy toothpaste, as we talked about. Or figuring out which car to buy or which politician to vote for.
Every single entity is using a threat of fear, a wave of peer pressure, or a shiny novelty to violently grab our attention.
There was a brilliant book by Peter Wybrow mentioned in the text called American Mania that explores the physiological cost of this.
It's a great reference.
Wybrow argues that corporate America's relentless, unyielding promises of more, 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 this constant barrage of carrots and aspirations, are literally overloading the reward circuits in our human brains.
We were not evolutionarily designed to process this volume of stimulation and threat.
We just can't handle it.
Exactly. When you are constantly evaluating whether you are getting a good deal or whether you should be afraid of a competitor or whether you are falling behind your peers, your brain is constantly releasing cortisol.
The stress hormone.
The sheer volume of manipulations we face creates massive chronic stress.
It is making us physically sick.
We are seeing record levels of ulcers, clinical depression, high blood pressure, and severe anxiety.
So, the short-term gains that drive quarterly business metrics are actually destroying our biological health.
Because it is exhausting.
Deciding what to buy, who to trust, or where to work shouldn't feel like navigating an active minefield of psychological traps.
No, it shouldn't.
It creates immense stress for the buyer, who is constantly worried they're being tricked, or missing out on a rebate, or making the wrong choice.
And it creates equally immense stress for the seller.
Right. The seller has to constantly come up with a new guerrilla marketing tactic, a lower price point, or a new shiny feature just to survive another 3 months.
When manipulations are the norm, it is a war of attrition. No one truly wins in the long term.
Which brings us to the ultimate synthesis of everything we've unpacked today.
The big takeaway.
Whether it is a business dropping a price, offering a labyrinth of a rebate, running a terrifying advertisement about a home invasion, or making an impossible aspirational promise about overnight wealth, manipulations are, at their core, a transactional treadmill.
A transactional treadmill, that is the perfect way to visualize it.
When you are on a treadmill, you have to keep running faster and faster, burning more and more energy, just to stay in the exact same place.
It's a relentless tax.
It taxes our physical health with chronic stress, it taxes our corporate profit margins with constant discounting, and it taxes our societal trust in the marketplace.
These manipulative tactics are the desperate tools of companies that have completely forgotten or perhaps never even knew why they exist in the first place.
They are addicted to the short-term high of the transaction.
Completely blind to the long-term decay of their own foundation.
We have spent this entire deep dive staring at the exhaustion and the hidden, corrosive costs of manipulation.
It's been heavy.
We've seen how it drives the modern economy, but leaves us stressed, sick, and entirely disloyal.
But there is a way off the treadmill.
There is. A rare group of leaders and organizations doesn't need to force us to act.
They don't need to bribe us with carrots or threaten us with sticks.
Because they start their communication from a completely different place in the human brain.
Next time, we are going to look at the actual biology of how those leaders inspire us to follow them voluntarily.
I genuinely cannot wait for that. It is going to be a fascinating shift from looking at how we are forced to act, to understanding why we are naturally inspired to act.
It's going to be great.
Until then, the next time you see a massive cashback offer or an advertisement warning you about an impending disaster if you don't buy their product, just pause and ask yourself, is this a real threat to my survival? Or is it just a bank robber with a banana? Think about it.
Why is it that you can give people every single logical reason, right? Like every fact, every figure, every data point about why your idea is just objectively the best, and they still won't buy in?
Yeah, it's incredibly frustrating.
It is. I mean, think about it. You sit there in a meeting, or maybe you're pitching a client, or I don't know, just trying to convince your partner of a new plan for the house, and you have the spreadsheets.
Always the spreadsheet.
Always. You have the undeniable return on investment. You've got all the features mapped out perfectly. It is logically airtight.
Right.
And yet the person sitting across from you, they just sort of cross their arms, they shake their head, and they say something like, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right.
That phrase, doesn't feel right.
Yes. We live in a world that is just absolutely obsessed with data, with features, with specs. Like, we think that if we just find the exact right metric, we win the argument.
But we don't.
We don't. Yet the most influential leaders and companies in the world, they completely ignore this playbook. They seem to just effortlessly bypass all that resistance. So, what do they know that the rest of us are completely missing?
That's the million-dollar question.
Because if you don't understand this secret to true influence, you are pretty much doomed to endlessly rely on manipulation or dropping your prices or just, stressing yourself out trying to force people to get on board.
Well, the thing is that invisible wall you're hitting, it isn't a failure of logic at all.
No.
No, it's a failure of biology.
Okay. Biology. That's a twist.
Right. So today, we are taking a really close look at the core mechanics of human inspiration. We're drawing heavily from Simon Sinek's work in his book Start With Why, and specifically we're focusing on a framework he calls the Golden Circle.
The Golden Circle. Got it.
But, and this is crucial, we aren't just looking at this as some neat little communication trick or like a marketing gimmick.
Right.
We're actually going to map this framework directly to the evolutionary biology of the human brain.
I am so here for this.
It's fascinating stuff because whether you are an entrepreneur who is just, trying to stand out in a totally crowded market, or a manager pitching a new initiative to your team, or honestly just someone trying to communicate better in your everyday life, you are about to learn what is basically a biological shortcut.
A shortcut to what exactly?
It's about bypassing that resistance you were just talking about.
Yeah.
And inspiring genuine, lasting loyalty.
Man, I am so ready for this because I see this failure literally everywhere. I mean, including in my own life, to be totally honest.
Oh, we all do it.
So let's establish the baseline here, because I feel like we have to understand what practically everyone is doing wrong before we can actually fix it.
Exactly.
Sinek refers to the standard way we communicate as the outside-in approach. So can you sort of break down the geometry of this golden circle and how most of us are currently navigating it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I want you to just imagine a bullseye.
Okay, picture a bullseye.
Right. 3 concentric circles. The outermost ring is labeled what? The middle ring is how. And the center, like the actual bullseye itself, is why.
What, how, WY, moving outside in.
Exactly. Now, if you look at almost every organization, every politician, or even just people handing out resumes at a job fair, they almost universally operate from the outside of this circle and move inward.
We start with the outside.
Yeah, they start with what they
Oh.
do. And, I mean, that makes total sense on a surface level, right? Because it is incredibly easy to articulate.
Sure.
It's your job title. It's the literal physical product you sell. It's the service your company provides. Everyone on Earth pretty much knows their what.
Right. Like, I am a software engineer, or we make insulated coffee mugs. That is the what.
Yeah.
It's totally binary. Like, it exists or it doesn't.
Exactly. It's undeniable fact.
Yeah.
Then some companies or some individuals, they move one step inward to the HLW.
Right, the middle circle.
Right. The HLW is your differentiating value proposition. It's your proprietary process, your unique selling point.
Yeah.
The specific features that supposedly make you better or faster than the guy next door.
Okay, so sticking with the mug example, the pitch becomes something like, we make insulated coffee mugs, and how we do it is through a patented double-wall vacuum seal that keeps your coffee hot for 24 hours.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the what and the HLW.
Which, honestly, that sounds completely reasonable to me. Like, if someone pitched me that, I think it was a really solid pitch.
And it does sound completely logical.
Right.
But here is the massive, gaping trap that everyone falls into. Stop right there.
You don't go to the center.
Almost never.
Yeah.
They rarely, if ever, articulate WHY. They do what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to be incredibly clear about this right out of the gate because people get this wrong all the time.
What's that?
Making money is not a WHY.
Right. It's a business, so everyone assumes the Y is cash.
Exactly. But making money is just a result of your actions. It's a metric. A WHY is a purpose. It's a cause.
Yeah.
It's a fundamental belief. It is the very reason your organization even exists in the first place,
Yeah.
beyond just pure financial survival. Like, why do you actually get out of bed every morning? And maybe more importantly, why should anyone else care?
Man. So the standard playbook that everyone uses is going from the clearest, most tangible thing, the what, and then completely ignoring the fuzziest, most abstract thing, the WHY.
That's the outside-in approach in a nutshell.
And you're saying this completely fails to inspire.
Utterly fails.
Okay, but I have to push back hard on this for a second
Go for it.
because I literally just bought a new television last week.
Okay.
And I can promise you I did not care at all about the manufacturer's deep underlying purpose or their cosmic belief system.
Yeah.
I just looked at 2 TVs online. They had roughly the same specs, and one was discounted by $50, so I bought that one. My brand loyalty went right out the window for $50. So isn't business, at the end of the day, just about having an objectively better or cheaper product? I mean, people are rational actors who just want to maximize their own value, aren't we?
Okay, that is the exact assumption that drives the whole outside-in approach. And if humans were purely rational actors, you would be 100% correct.
Oh, we're not.
But we aren't. We are highly emotional biological creatures.
Mm.
What you just described with your television purchase, that is a perfect example of a transaction.
Okay.
But a transaction is not loyalty. We have to sharply define the difference between those two concepts because they are worlds apart.
Oh, so.
A transaction is just a one-time exchange of value. You bought the TV because it was cheaper. The very moment another competitor offers a TV that is, say, $10 cheaper than that one, you will abandon that first company without a single second thought.
Yeah, that's completely fair. I definitely do not care about the PV brand. If they go bankrupt tomorrow, I won't shed a tear.
Exactly. You have zero allegiance. Loyalty, on the other hand, totally defies logic.
What do you mean?
Loyalty is when someone is willing to suffer a deliberate inconvenience or pay a massive premium just to stick with you.
Oh, like people who only fly one specific airline even if it costs more.
Exactly. They might have a layover that takes an extra 2 hours or pay 20% more for the exact same underlying service, but they do it gladly.
Because they have status.
Well, status is part of it, but deeply they do it because they feel a connection. When you only communicate outside in, starting with what and how, you completely forfeit your ability to generate that kind of loyalty.
Wow.
You are forced to rely on what Sinek calls manipulations to drive those purely transactional behaviors you just talked about.
Manipulations. I mean, that's a really strong word. It implies, I don't know, a kind of deception.
It doesn't necessarily mean malicious deception. It's not like you're lying to people. It just means you are pulling artificial levers to force a behavior because you haven't inspired that behavior organically.
Okay. So what's a manipulation lever?
Dropping the price is the most common one. And look, it works. It works brilliantly for a quick hit of sales.
Sure, everybody loves a sale.
But it's an addiction. Because once your buyers get used to lower prices, it becomes almost impossible to raise them again. Your margins get sliced thinner and thinner, your competitors match your discounts, and suddenly your product is nothing but a commodity.
You know, that actually makes me think of General Motors in the late 20th century.
Oh, great example.
Right, because if you look at GM throughout the 1950s and 60s, they were totally untouchable. They were this absolute titan of industry.
They own the roads.
Yeah. But by the 1990s and into the 2000s, foreign competition was just eating them alive. And how did they respond? They didn't inspire anyone to buy American cars. They just relied heavily on promotions.
The cashback era.
Exactly. They started offering these massive cashback incentives. Sometimes it was up to like $7,000 just to get a car off the lot.
Which is insane for a profit margin.
Right. And sure, it drove sales up in the short term, but it completely eroded their profitability. But worse than that, they literally trained the American consumer to become a cashback junkie.
Yep, they train their own customers to wait.
People stopped buying cars when they actually needed them and just waited around for the next massive GM rebate.
It is a textbook example of manipulation destroying a brand from the inside out. And promotions are just one flavor of manipulation, by the way.
There are others.
Oh, yeah. Think about fear.
Oh, wow.
Every 36 seconds, someone dies of a heart attack. Buy our supplement. Fear is an incredibly powerful manipulator. Or aspirational messages.
Like 6 steps to a happier life.
Exactly. Or get your dream body in 6 weeks. It's manipulating your desire for a better life. Or peer pressure. 4 out of 5 dentists prefer this gum.
Oh, man, the dentist stat. Classic.
Right. Or, my personal favorite, novelty, which companies constantly mistake for actual innovation.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. Like when a smartphone company adds a 4th camera lens to the back of the phone and they call it a revolution in mobile technology.
Yes.
It's just a shiny new novelty to spike a quarterly sales report that's not changing the world.
Precisely. And none of those things build trust. None of them build loyalty. They just manipulate the consumer into a transaction. So we really need to look at the alternative. We need to see what happens when you actually flip the script.
Okay, I want to feel the difference here. Let's do a little thought experiment.
Let's do it.
Let's imagine a parallel universe where Apple is just a normal, run-of-the-mill, outside-in company. They follow the exact same boring playbook that 99% of organizations use today.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
I'll play the role of this boring version of Apple.
I'm the consumer. Pitch me.
All right. If I were pitching you from the outside in, it would sound exactly like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one?
Okay, and if I'm sitting across from you, honestly, I am already checking my watch. I am entirely unmoved.
So flat.
So flat.
It sounds like a million other tech commercials that I just instinctively skip through on YouTube. Like, it's just a list of features. There's no soul to it.
Yeah, because it's just a statement of what you do and how you do it.
Yeah.
There is no emotional hook. There is absolutely nothing for me to believe in.
Right.
Now, I want to pause for a second because the practical takeaway here for anyone listening is so critical. You need to look at your own communication.
Like personal communication.
Yes. Look at your resume. Look at the way you pitch yourself in a job interview. Look at the project proposals you send to your boss. If you are leading with a list of features or tasks or past experiences like, I managed a team of 10 and increased sales by 5%, you are communicating outside in.
Wow.
You are actively commoditizing yourself. You're forcing the other person to judge you purely on metrics and price or salary.
Man, that is a brutal realization.
It hurts a little, right?
It really does.
Yeah.
My resume is just a list of my whats. I am basically begging the hiring manager to just put me in a spreadsheet and compare me to the next person based on totally soulless data points.
Exactly.
I become the discounted TV.
You invite transaction, not loyalty. You are the $50 off TV. So we have to perform the inside-out flip. This is the revolutionary alternative that Sinek talks about. Inspired leaders, the ones who command true, unbreakable loyalty, they think, they act, and they communicate from the inside of the circle out.
Okay.
They start at the center with WHY, then they move to Hey Shall W, and finally they get to what?
So by starting with the core belief, the WHY, the subsequent HIWs, and whats aren't just a boring list of features anymore.
No, they change completely.
They become the tangible, physical proof of that core belief. The mantra here is, and I love this, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it.
Yes, let's redo that Apple role play.
Let's do it.
But this time, let's read the pitch in the actual order Apple uses in the real world. Read it from the inside out.
All right, here is real-world Apple communicating from the inside out. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We happen to make great computers. Want to buy one.
The difference is just staggering. It really is.
It is the exact same underlying product. The what hasn't changed at all, but it doesn't even feel like the same pitch.
It doesn't. When I say it that way, it feels like I'm inviting you to join a movement rather than just begging you to buy a piece of hardware.
Because it isn't a marketing gimmick. It's a declaration of belief. Apple isn't trying to sell you a computer. They are telling you what they stand for.
Alrighty.
And if you, the consumer, also believe in challenging the status quo, if you see yourself as a rebel, as someone who thinks differently, you are naturally magnetically drawn to them.
So it's an identity thing.
Exactly.
Right.
You buy their computer not because of the processor speed, but because holding that glowing Apple logo in a coffee shop serves as a physical symbol of your own identity. The what is just proof of the WHY.
That perfectly explains something that has always fascinated me about the tech industry.
What's that?
It explains how Apple can so effortlessly transition from making desktop computers to MP3 players to mobile phones to smartwatches.
Yeah, because their identity isn't tied to their what. Their identity isn't, we are a computer company. Their identity is, we challenge the status quo.
Exactly.
So of course they can challenge the status quo in the music industry. Of course they can challenge it in telecommunications or wearable health tech. It all makes perfect, logical sense to the consumer.
Now contrast that with a company like Dell.
Oh, poor Dell.
Right, because Dell makes fantastic computers. Truly high-quality, reliable machines. But their identity, their entire corporate messaging, has historically been anchored strictly to their what? They make PCs.
Right.
So back in the early 2000s, when Dell tried to introduce MP3 players and PDAs, the market completely rejected
I
them.
don't even remember a Dell MP3 player.
Most people don't. It felt incredibly weird. People subconsciously thought, why on earth would I buy a pocket music player from a bulky PC company?
It just doesn't compute.
It felt inauthentic. Dell's WHY was fuzzy. We didn't know what they believed in. We only knew what they made.
You know, if you don't have a WHY, you're basically that guy on a first date who just sits down and immediately starts bragging about his salary, the car he drives, and the famous people he knows.
Oh, we all know that guy.
Right. Let's call him Brad.
Let's talk about Brad.
So Brad sits down, the drinks arrive, and he just goes straight to the whats. I'm a VP at a major firm. I drive a Porsche. I have a huge house. I know the owner of this restaurant.
Yeah.
He's just listing features, and he is absolutely going home alone. Or at best, he might attract someone who only cares about his money, which, again, is a purely transactional relationship.
Right. There's no loyalty there.
Exactly. He is not building trust. Now imagine Brad flips it and communicates inside out.
Okay, inside out, Brad.
He sits down with the same person and starts with his WHY. He says, you know what I love about my life? I get to wake up every day and do something I'm incredibly passionate about. I get to solve complex problems and help people grow. And the best part is, because I love what I do so much, I've actually been really successful at it. I've been able to buy a beautiful house, I drive a car I really enjoy, and I get to meet fascinating people.
See, that is a brilliant analogy because the tangible facts are identical in both scenarios.
Exactly. The whats haven't changed.
Brad still has the Porsche, the house, and the network. But the order of presentation changes the entire psychological impact. In the second scenario, the whats are no longer this arrogant, shallow brag. They are tangible evidence of Brad's passion and his character.
Yeah, they prove that his WHY is authentic.
Exactly.
Which honestly brings up a massive glaring question for me.
Hit me.
Okay, so the inside-out method works in practice. Apple proves it. The dating analogy makes total intuitive sense. But what is actually happening to the person listening? Like, is this just clever copywriting? Is it just a neat psychological trick for marketers to use? Or is there a physical, anatomical reason we react this way?
This is where we leave the realm of business theory and enter the realm of evolutionary biology.
My favorite part.
Because the golden circle is not a psychological framework someone just sketched out on a whiteboard in a corporate boardroom to sell more stuff.
Yeah.
It actually maps perfectly and anatomically to a physical cross-section of the human brain.
Okay, I need you to unpack this slowly because this is where the entire concept absolutely blew my mind.
It is wild.
How does a marketing framework map to our actual neuroanatomy?
Let's look at the brain from an evolutionary perspective. The newest area of our brain, the part that developed most recently in Homo sapiens, is the neocortex. It sits on the outer layer of the brain.
Okay, neocortex, outer layer.
The neocortex corresponds perfectly to the what level of the golden circle.
The outside ring?
Exactly. This part of the brain is responsible for rational thought, analytical thought, and crucially, language. It is the part of the brain that understands facts, figures, features, spreadsheets, and complex data.
So when I'm looking at a spec sheet, like comparing the battery life and pixel density of two different laptops, my neocortex is doing all the heavy lifting. It's crunching the numbers.
Exactly. It's reading the language, doing the math. But here is where evolution gets absolutely fascinating. Let's go deeper into the brain, to the older sections.
Moving inward.
The middle two sections of the brain make up what is called the limbic system, or the limbic brain. This is our mammalian brain.
Okay.
The limbic brain corresponds directly to the HOW and the WHY levels of the golden circle, the inner rings.
Got it.
And here is the absolute critical fact, the linchpin of everything we are talking about today. The limbic brain is responsible for all of our feelings. Trust, loyalty, love, fear, all of it lives here.
Wow.
Furthermore, the limbic brain is responsible for all human behavior and all decision-making.
All decision-making.
All of it. But, and this is the massive biological catch, the limbic brain has absolutely no capacity for language.
Wait. Let me stop you there and make sure I'm fully grasping this.
Right.
The part of the brain that makes the actual decisions, the part that drives our behavior and chooses whether or not to buy something or trust someone, does not have the physical hardware for language.
It does not.
Uh-huh.
The capacity for language evolved much, much later in the neocortex.
That's insane. So when you communicate outside in, when you bombard someone with facts, figures, and specs, you are talking directly to their neocortex.
Correct.
The neocortex can understand vast amounts of complicated information. It can analyze the data perfectly. It can agree that your product is 10% faster. But the neocortex does not drive behavior. It doesn't make the final choice.
This is exactly why you can give someone every logical reason to buy your product or agree with your idea, and they still cross their arms and say no.
Because they just don't feel right about it.
Exactly. You gave all the data to the neocortex, but you completely bypassed the limbic system, the actual decision maker. This is rooted deep in our survival as a species.
How so?
Hundreds of thousands of years ago, early hominids didn't have complex language, but they needed to survive in incredibly dangerous environments. Survival required tribal cohesion.
Right, you can't survive alone.
You had to implicitly trust the leader of your tribe. You had to feel that they had your best interests at heart, that their WHY aligned with the tribe's survival. That trust was processed in the limbic brain long before we had words to describe it. If you couldn't feel trust, you died.
That is profound. So when you communicate inside out, starting with WHY, you are talking directly to the limbic system.
Yes.
You are speaking the nonverbal language of trust and belief. You are speaking directly to the part of the brain that controls decision-making and behavior.
You got it.
And then, once the limbic system makes a decision based on that feeling of trust or alignment, the neocortex kicks in afterward to rationalize that gut decision using the whats.
Yes. The neocortex provides the alibi for the limbic system's crime, so to speak.
I love that. The alibi. This completely reframes the entire concept of a gut feeling.
Doesn't it?
When someone sits in a boardroom and says, look, I know the data says we should go with vendor A, but I just have a gut feeling about vendor B, they aren't being mystical or irrational.
No, not at all.
They are literally experiencing a limbic brain response. Their decision-making brain is driving a behavior, but because that part of the brain has no language capacity, they physically cannot articulate why they feel that way. It literally manifests as a physical feeling in their stomach.
It's the exact same reason it is so incredibly difficult to explain why you love your spouse.
Oh, this is a great point.
If you ask someone, why do you love your partner? What do?
They usually start listing what's, like, she's funny, she's smart, she's kind to my family, we have the same taste in movies.
Right. But those are just features. There are
Right.
millions of funny, smart, kind people in the world who like the same movies as you. But you don't love all of them. Right. The true reason you love your spouse resides deep in the limbic system where there are no words. So we struggle, we stammer, and we rely on rationalizations, the whats, to try and explain an emotional state to the outside world.
But wait a minute. If people physically cannot articulate what drives their decisions, then asking customers what they want in a focus group is inherently flawed.
It is.
Like, market research is basically a sham. If the decision-making part of the brain doesn't control language, people literally cannot accurately tell you what will inspire them to buy.
You've just hit on the fundamental flaw in traditional market research. Companies spend hundreds of millions of dollars sitting consumers in sterile rooms asking them what they want.
And what happens?
The consumers use their neocortex to answer because you ask them a question requiring language. They say, we want high quality, low price, good service, and more features.
Which sounds completely reasonable.
So the company goes back to the lab, delivers exactly that, and then the product launches and sales remain totally flat.
Because the neocortex gave the answer, but the limbic system handles the actual purchasing behavior.
Exactly.
That brings to mind the famous Henry Ford quote. You know, if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse.
A perfect example.
People couldn't articulate the desire for an automobile because it didn't exist in their frame of reference. Their neocortex could only process the whats they already knew horses.
Right.
But Ford's WHY, making transportation accessible to the everyday person, appealed to their limbic system instantly once the what was actually produced and put in front of them.
The tech industry has a brilliant modern parallel to this with the invention of the MP3 player.
Oh, okay. Let's hear it.
A lot of people forget that Apple did not invent the MP3 player.
Wait, they didn't?
No, a company called Creative Technology did.
Creative Technology. Never heard of them.
Right, and on paper, Creative Technology was infinitely more qualified to dominate digital music. They made the Sound Blaster audio cards for PCs. They were the undisputed experts in computer audio.
Okay, so they had the pedigree?
Absolutely. But when they launched their MP3 player, they marketed it directly to the neocortex. They literally advertised it as a 5 GB MP3 player.
Wow, a purely rational, feature-based, they're basically just selling a spec sheet.
Exactly. It spoke exclusively to the analytical brain. Then Apple comes along 22 months later.
That's practically a lifetime in tech.
They're incredibly late to the market. But Apple speaks to the limbic system. They don't talk about gigabytes or file formats or transfer speeds. They launched the iPod with one simple, beautiful message. 1,000 songs in your pocket.
Chills. That is so good.
They spoke directly to the emotional desire for an experience. Same underlying technology, same basic function, but a completely different biological target. And Apple absolutely decimated the market.
Because Apple understood that you must win hearts before minds, the limbic system before the neocortex.
Always.
The practical takeaway here is that we all have to just stop trying to win arguments, negotiations, or sales with spreadsheets and data alone.
Put the spreadsheets away.
If a decision doesn't feel right to the listener's limbic brain, no amount of data will force their loyalty. You can manipulate a short-term transaction with a discount, sure, but you cannot secure loyalty without connecting on the level of WHY.
So if the biology proves that starting with WHY is the key to inspiring action, we really have to look at the dark side of this.
The dark side.
Yeah. What happens when a company or a person forgets their WHY?
Oh, that's interesting.
This is what Sinek refers to as the danger of the fuzzy WHY, or the commodity trap. And ironically, the catalyst for losing your WHY is usually success.
Success causes you to lose your WHY. I can actually see that. When a company is small, it's basically just a few people in a garage, right?
Yeah, late nights ordering pizza.
The founder is intimately involved in everything. Their passion, their WHY is palpable. It's in the room with you. The decisions they make feel right because they trust their gut. They are operating purely on limbic instinct.
But as an organization grows, a split often happens. The company becomes wildly successful, they go public, they hire thousands of employees. Suddenly, the focus shifts.
To what?
The company becomes obsessed with the what? The metrics, the stock price, the quarterly earnings, the market expansion. And in that obsession, the WHY goes fuzzy.
The clarity of that original purpose just gets lost in a sea of corporate bureaucracy and middle management.
Exactly. And when a WHY goes fuzzy, an organization loses its flexibility and its capacity for true innovation. They get stuck in a rut of just making their what slightly better or slightly cheaper.
Like adding a fourth camera lens to the phone.
Exactly. They add a new feature here, a minor upgrade there. This inevitably leads to commoditization, because when your WHY is fuzzy, you are just like everyone else. And when you're just like everyone else, the only way to compete is to drop your price or add a gimmick.
Which creates that cycle of endless stress and shrinking margins we talked about earlier.
Think about the classic business case of the 19th century railroads. This is a perfect, tragic illustration of a fuzzy WHY.
Okay, take me back to the 1800s.
In the late 1800s, the railroad companies were the biggest, most powerful, most successful corporations in America. They quite literally altered the physical landscape of the continent.
They were massive.
But they achieved such monumental success that they completely forgot WHY they started. They defined their entire identity by their what? They believed they were in the railroad business.
Oh, wow. Which is a fatal, catastrophic narrowing of perspective.
Huge mistake.
Because they defined themselves by what they did, all their massive capital investments went into tracks, cross-tees, and steam engines. They were constantly looking down at the ground.
Exactly.
So at the dawn of the 20th century, when a new technology emerged, the airplane, they completely missed it.
They didn't see it as relevant to them.
Because it didn't run on tracks. All those massive, wealthy railroad companies eventually declined, consolidated, or just went out of business.
But imagine if they had remembered their underlying purpose, their WHY. If they had defined themselves as being in the mass transportation business or connecting people across vast distances, they would have seen the airplane not as an irrelevant novelty or a threat, but as the next logical how to fulfill their WHY.
If they had stayed true to their WHY, those 19th century railroad monopolies would own all the major airlines today.
It is an incredible loss of potential, and it happens constantly in every single industry. When an organization defines itself by what it does, it becomes rigid. It cannot adapt to changing environments.
It's like staring at the hood of your car while you're driving instead of looking at the horizon.
That's a great way to put it.
If you are only looking at the hood, you're what? You're going to crash the very moment the road turns. We saw this exact same thing happen with the modern media landscape.
Oh, the newspapers?
Yes. Think about newspaper companies in the late 90s and early 2000s. They defined themselves by that what? They printed ink on physical dead trees. So when the internet arrived, they were totally paralyzed. If they had anchored their identity to their WHY, like, we inform the public and defend democracy, the medium wouldn't have mattered.
They could have owned the internet.
They could have seamlessly transitioned to digital journalism. But because they obsessed over the physical paper, they suffered immensely.
The music industry is another prime example.
Oh, this one makes me so mad.
For decades, the massive record labels controlled the distribution of physical media, vinyl records, cassette tapes, CDs. That was their what?
Selling plastic discs.
Exactly. When digital music and file sharing appeared with Napster, the industry's WHY was completely fuzzy. Instead of seeing digital distribution as an incredibly efficient new way to share music with the world, They saw it as a mortal threat to their physical CDs.
They literally sued their own customers.
They sued teenagers. They created a massive void of innovation, which allowed a scrappy computer company, Apple, armed with its crystal-clear WHY of challenging the status quo to step in, invent iTunes, and effectively take over the music industry's entire business model.
Or look at TiVo. TiVo is a fascinating case of an incredible technology that completely flopped commercially because of a fuzzy WHY.
Oh, TiVo's such a sad story.
They had the best product, the highest quality, great PR, but they completely ignored the WHY. They launched by telling the mass market what the product did. It pauses live TV, skips commercials, rewinds live TV, and records shows without videotape.
Which, to a technophobic mass market in the late 90s, that sounded complicated and totally unnecessary.
Right. TiVo appealed straight to the neocortex.
And how should they have pitched it?
If they had started with WHY, like, if you're the kind of person who likes to have total control of every aspect of your life, boy, do we have a product for you, the features would have served as proof of that belief. Instead, they played the feature game, they tried to win on specs, and they became a commodity before they even got off the ground.
This brings us to a really crucial metric for understanding when a company has lost its way, which Sinek calls the split.
The split. Okay, explain that.
It's visualized on a simple graph, where time is the x-axis and money, or revenue, is the y-axis. When a company starts, the what and the WHY are perfectly parallel. The founders know exactly what they are doing and why they are doing it.
Makes sense.
But as the company grows, the what line rockets upward: more money, more scale, more employees, more products. If the founder isn't incredibly disciplined about communicating the WHY to all those new people, the line representing the WHY plateaus or even drops.
So the line's separate.
Yes. That divergence, that growing gap between the what and the WHY is the split.
Wow. And you see that everywhere. Like Walmart is the tragic example of the split.
Absolutely.
Sam Walton built Walmart with an incredibly clear WHY to serve the community. He truly believed in taking care of everyday people. He was famously frugal, not out of corporate greed, but because he believed that every single penny he saved could be passed on to the customer, improving their lives.
Right.
The cheap goods were the what, but the WHY was community service.
And while Walton was alive, that WHY permeated the culture. It was the filter for every single decision they made.
But after he passed away, the company suffered a massive split. The new management obsessed over the staggering scale, the massive profits, the relentlessly low prices, but completely lost the WHY.
They forgot the community.
Completely. The obsession with low prices, stripped of the desire to serve the community, led to ruthless cost-cutting, employee dissatisfaction, and a string of brutal public scandals. They began treating their own employees and suppliers as expendable commodities just to keep prices low, which was the exact opposite of Walton's community-first vision.
Now, contrast that with Costco, which maintained a crystal-clear WHY.
Oh, I love Costco.
Everyone loves Costco. Costco also sells goods cheaply in massive volumes, but they pay their employees well above minimum wage, they offer great benefits, and they have incredibly low turnover.
Yeah, people stay there for careers.
Because Costco's WHY is clear. They value their people and their members. Wall Street analysts actually used to criticize them for not squeezing more profit out of the business in the short term.
They told them to raise prices.
Yes. But over the long term, Costco's stock growth utterly outpaced Walmart's in the post-Walton era. Because loyalty, genuine limbic loyalty from both employees and customers, is wildly more profitable over time than short-term manipulation.
Which is why the practical takeaway for you, listening right now, is so critical. Never allow your identity, whether as a massive corporation or just as an individual professional navigating your career, to be defined by the specific product or service you currently offer.
Never.
Always anchor your identity to your underlying cause. Why do you do what you do? Because knowing your WHY provides the ultimate filter for every decision you make.
It's like going to the grocery store. Sinek offers this brilliant metaphor called the celery test.
Oh, the celery test is so good.
Imagine you were at a networking event, or maybe just scrolling through LinkedIn, and 4 different highly successful people come up to you and offer advice on how to be successful.
Okay, 4 pieces of advice.
One says, you need M&Ms to succeed. M&Ms are the future. The next says, no, rice milk is the future, invest in rice milk. The third says, Oreo cookies are where the money is. And the fourth says, you need celery.
Right, so you have 4 wildly different options.
If you don't know your WHY, what do? You buy all of them, you panic, you spend a fortune on M&Ms, rice milk, Oreos, and celery.
Just to hedge your bets.
Exactly. You are running around trying to do everything, chasing every trend, because you're chasing the wet. You are letting outside forces dictate your strategy. But if your WHY is clear, let's say your WHY is to always make healthy choices and treat my body well, your decision is instantly made for you before you even walk down the aisle.
You just buy the celery and the rice milk.
Yes. You leave the Oreos and M&Ms on the shelf.
And here's the truly brilliant part of that metaphor. When you are standing in line at the checkout counter holding celery and rice milk, anyone looking at you instantly knows what you believe.
Your actions reflect your values.
Exactly. Your what's, the items in your basket, are perfectly visibly consistent with your WHY. You are authentic. People who also value health will be drawn to you. But if you are standing in line holding Oreos, M&Ms, celery, and rice milk, no one has any idea what you stand for.
You just look confused.
You look totally confused. Your megaphone is loud, but the message is entirely fuzzy.
Which is why discipline and consistency are required to keep the golden circle in perfect balance.
Yeah.
It isn't enough to just discover your WHY once, print it on a poster, and frame it on a wall.
Corporate posters are the worst.
Clarity of WHY is just the foundation. Discipline of how W means holding yourself and your organization strictly accountable to the values and principles that bring your WHY to life every single day. And consistency of what means everything you say and do, the products you make, your marketing campaigns, the people you hire, the way you answer the phone, must serve as tangible, undeniable proof of that belief.
All three circles have to align.
When those three elements are perfectly aligned, you achieve true authenticity.
And we need to be really clear about this. Authenticity isn't some corporate buzzword.
No, it's not a marketing tactic.
It's not something you can find by asking a focus group, hey, what do we need to do to seem more authentic to you? Authenticity means you actually believe what you are saying and doing. It means your limbic system and your neocortex are in perfect alignment.
If we synthesize everything we've explored today, it really boils down to one incredibly clear, memorable insight.
Let's hear it.
True differentiation in a crowded market or a crowded job pool, or even in your personal relationships, is never found in the features, the price, or the rational benefits. Differentiation is a biological phenomenon.
Biological.
Yes, it occurs when a leader or a company clearly articulates a belief, the WHY acts with disciplined values, the HOW, and produces consistent results.
The what?
The golden circle isn't a marketing tool you whip out for a branding campaign. It is the literal blueprint of human decision-making.
That really is.
When you align your communication with how the human brain actually evolved to work, when you speak to the limbic system first, by starting with WHY, you stop manipulating people. You stop treating them like commodities to be bribed with discounts or frightened with statistics.
You start inspiring them.
Instead, you start inspiring them. There's that old parable about the two stonemasons, right? You ask the first one what he's doing, and he says, I'm laying bricks. That's his what. You ask the second one what he's doing, and he says, I'm building a cathedral.
Yeah.
That is his WHY. You have to give people a cathedral to build, not just a wall to lay stones for. When you inspire people with a cathedral, you don't have to convince them of your value. They convince themselves, because your what has become the physical symbol of their own beliefs.
And that takes us right back to where we started. You're sitting in that room, the spreadsheets are perfect, the logic is flawless, and they still won't buy in. You know now that you were talking to the wrong part of their brain.
The neocortex.
You were speaking to the neocortex, waiting for it to make a decision it is biologically incapable of making. So, now that you know the biological secret to inspiring others by starting with WHY, the real challenge begins. How do you ensure that every single decision you make tomorrow, from the emails you send to the products you launch to the projects you take on, stays authentically aligned with that purpose without ever going fuzzy? Take that question with you as you prepare for the challenges ahead, and we will see you in the next deep dive.
What you just listened was the beginning of a full audio, way longer, explaining every single chapter of the book. If you would like to keep listening to the end and access to the full audio, you can access it with the link down below in the description and in the pinned comment.